Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
Breaking news tonight, a Malaysia Airlines flight with 239 people on board, including 4 Americans, has gone missing.
From the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
Hey, what's up, chat? How are we doing tonight? Appreciate everybody already being here, getting in quick. Appreciate you. Yes, Dorian, you got in first. Welcome, buddy. Welcome, everyone. Cheers. Blue cheese, olive martini night. I had to get some new olives. The other ones were not working. They were not working. Yeah, that's fine, Kat. A lot of people don't know anything about the case. It is what it is. I was actually on with Alex Jones, so he probably knows about the case if you tell him about the missing plane. Literally did a whole piece with Alex Jones, so I'm pretty sure he knows about me. I was on InfoWars. He may just have forgotten. So let's see. What are we... why is my sound so high today? Weird. Oh, that's why. Let's turn it down a little bit. That should be better. Okay. Yeah, appreciate you, the below. Hey, everybody. What's going on? Okay, so what are we doing tonight? We're going to go over a little of the new SBIRS information that's going on. We're going to look at some FLIR footage that was posted, and we're going to talk about Malcolm Bendall a little bit. We're going to write a letter to Stephen Greer today. We got a lot of stuff to do here. And we're going to jump into this space in a minute as well. And we're going to talk with Skyfire News and Keemstar and Red Panda Koala in a few minutes. So that's the plan. We should probably just get right into it because we got a lot to get through. So let's get started. Okay. Why does this always become smaller? Okay. Let's start with this FLIR footage I haven't posted yet. Pool request on Reddit. I'm happy to see that people have actually done a little bit of investigation now. He found, he or she, I don't know, found a palette that is similar to the drone video that's in blue, where people had said that they don't look like this. Well, here you go. There's the blue palette for you, folks. I'm not sure why this is actually a controversial statement, but they definitely have the palette that we see in the drone video. I think some people, some debunkers try to argue that it's not like that. I think there was even a FLIR, supposed Twitter FLIR expert who didn't realize that this is what drone footage looked like. Now, of course, when I asked that person, I think their name was David Falk or something like that. Just complete loser. Like, just pretended like they were an expert when they really weren't an expert at all, just because they have a commercial grade FLIR footage, FLIR video at their home, as if that's going to be equivalent to the military. And I remember when I asked them if they had any experience with MQ-1C drones, they didn't say anything, because these people on Twitter, everybody wants to pretend like they're an expert when they're not. It's really embarrassing. So absolutely no question whatsoever, drones do have the capability to film in the blue rainbow palette that we see in this MH370 drone video. You can't listen to random pretend experts on Twitter. They have no idea what they're talking about. Same with the fake experts on Reddit as well. There had to be half a dozen people on Reddit pretending like they don't have color footage like this. They're just all literal liars, right? Gatekeepers and liars who pretend like they have expertise when they don't. Several of them especially are like some of the people that are like the biggest trolls on the debunker subreddit. All literally just, yeah, I mean, another loss for Reddit. I mean, they're just the most embarrassing, honestly, how much they lie about stuff like this. And the thing is, they confidently lie about it too, right? They just confidently lie. Like, it doesn't look like that. They don't have any footage like that, blah, blah, blah. It's just literal just lies upon lies upon lies. It's ridiculous. So, absolutely, this exists. I think these are the sources. Yeah, okay. I mean, look at this. Come on, man. What do you mean they don't have rainbow palette? Ridiculous, man. Ridiculous. So, pull request, good job, good investigation. Not bad. Appreciate you, bud. Okay, next thing, because I want to get into this here as well. Let's go to the SBIRS stuff. So, man, a lot of SBIRS stuff today. Whoa. So, I posted... Well, the scalar thing's really interesting as well. That this seems to be the secret, scalars. So if you want to watch the video, I posted some whatever captions over it so you can watch this video about scalars and what scalars are. But really, this is like how you explain the toroids and what the toroids are doing pretty much to create a scalar wave, which can create a gravitational wave. I mean, we're really close to figuring it out. I did a follow-up on this, so... I'll give some partial credit to Tacky NG, who, I don't know, this dude's off the deep end, unfortunately, but I'm still going to give him some partial credit. This is somebody who put in some early on investigative work, and they seem to have come back to life a little bit recently. But for some reason, like, because I refused to, like, this is one of those people who DM'd me early on and, like, insisted that it has to be aliens in the videos, even though there's literally no evidence whatsoever for it. And got super upset when I told them to stop, and they wouldn't stop DMing me, and they ended up getting blocked, and then they like had a total meltdown over it, and like that's how you get permanently blocked forever. Is you have little fits thinking that like I owe you something to listen to you in my DMs. I do not owe that of anybody. And the worst part is like they're 100% sure it's aliens, and their logic is just completely flawed. It's like their logic is, well, doesn't it make more sense for it to be aliens because aliens could be more capable of something like this? It's like, dude, that's not how any of this works. Like, you don't know what the capabilities of aliens would be, so you're just like, you have to follow actual science and logic and reason. Could it maybe be aliens? Maybe, but it's not worth trying to fight people over in general, right? So despite all that, oh yeah, and then they posted on the 3 Orb subreddit and started calling me grifter and stuff like that. And then they get surprised when they get banned, which of course you're going to get banned if you start literally defaming the moderator in your replies. Like, Tacky NG, like, get the help that you need, my man. Because then right after he gets banned, the very first thing he does is go to the debunker subreddit and sit there and whine about it. And of course not like point out the fact that he was sitting there defaming the moderator. He makes it sound like he got banned for no reason. And it's just like, these people are just so fucking pathetic. It's ridiculous, man. So, of course, then I permanently banned him after that. Like, I banned him for only 7 days at first to give him a chance, and then he immediately goes to the other subreddit and cries about it. It's like, okay, you're definitely getting permanently banned after that. Like, it's so sad. And the worst part is how they gaslight and seek validation from the other losers on Reddit. Like, no, Ashton unbanned me unfairly. Like, dude, you literally called me a grifter for no reason at all. Like, you didn't even have to include that in your comment, but like, you obviously have some weird thing for me and you can't get past it, right? Just, if you can't be a normal adult, just don't post online, man. It's a private subreddit too. What do you expect, dude? You know I'm a moderator. Just present the facts, exactly like Robert Romero's saying. So anyway, I'm still giving you partial credit for having found some of these links here. Anyway, so we found this link, or he found this link, and in this link, it mentions that the SBIRS system is constantly scanning the Earth every 10 seconds. The whole Earth, continuous view of all the Earth's surface, which it images every 10 seconds. The entire Earth. Now, this is a giveaway because we're looking at something in 6 frames per second. This is going to be important. Wait for the next post, guys. Because now I can see the debunker saying, oh, well, this says every 10 seconds, but we see something in 6 frames per second, right? So how can that be? That doesn't line up. Don't worry. We'll get to it. The other part is that a lot of these people have just been lying about the SBIRS system's not online. This is the same as the fake FLIR experts who are like, I don't know why so many people just make up bullshit and pretend like they're experts. No, the system wasn't online. There was no satellites in range. Blah, blah, blah. Like, why do people make up all this bullshit? Why do they pretend to be experts and make up all this bullshit? The SBIRS system reached operational capacity in 2013. End of debate. SBIRS system was online. It was mapping the whole globe when MH370 went missing. Also, as we're going to find from the next post, it operationalized old DSP satellites in its constellation as well. So it's not just made up of only the satellites that we know of. It's made up of other satellites not necessarily launched directly related to SBIRS. We know that as a fact now. And it enables them to detect and characterize a wide range of infrared phenomenon. Why is this important? Because people argue, well, why is it white in the satellite video and black in the thermal video? Because they're using different IR visual capabilities in the SBIRS system than they use for a rainbow palette thermal drone layer. Okay. In addition to that, can detect any significant infrared event on the globe, including explosions, fires, and plane crashes. Okay, so how did it not detect MH370, guys? How did it not detect MH370? Literally, the system detects plane crashes. So where is it? We literally have them on record saying the SBIRS system helped solve the mystery of MH370. How? Where? Where's the plane, man? How could you not see it? You're scanning the globe every 10 seconds. Every 10 seconds. A catalog of signatures, electromagnetic and IR of aircraft. Literally proof that it can scan for aircraft right here. 100% proof. SBIRS system absolutely 100% would have seen MH370. No question whatsoever. This is absolute proof. Okay. Next one. Wall Street Journal 4 days ago made this video. Does it look familiar, chat? Does this look familiar? Hold on. I'm going to put my headphones sound on. Look at this. It's the SBIRS video. They actually added a couple graphics to it. There it is. Look at this, chat. There it is. The SBIRS video. They didn't even credit. Oh, they did. Lockheed Martin right up there in the top left. So they have a stare and a scanner. So the question, why is it in 6 frames per second? Because it's using the starer. Now I think it might actually be staring from the geostationary satellites. So why the angle? Because it's going to be in the geostationary satellite angle from the Earth. It might actually be staring from the geostationary satellites. It might not actually be using USA 229. Even though we have a literal satellite pair staring right over it, that's a naval ocean surveillance satellite pair, staring right down at the spot at 1840 UTC. So the answer is we got multiple satellites staring at it. We might have geostationary ones staring directly at that spot using the stare, or it could be our USA 229, which has a sister satellite that could even take 3D stereoscopic imagery. That the whole purpose is literally naval ocean surveillance. And this one goes around the world every 90 minutes. So every day, these two satellites are basically mapping the entire planet by themselves. So absolutely no doubt whatsoever, United States government knows exactly what happened to this plane. It goes on to say, not only do they have stares that can search at specific locations and widespread locations to scan the whole planet every 10 seconds, it also says that their quote-unquote future plans, which, you know, who knows when this actually happened, include utilizing low Earth orbit satellites and mid-Earth orbit satellites. What are your low Earth orbit satellites? Boom, right here. These are your low Earth orbit satellites. So how would the SBIRS system use low Earth orbit satellites, guys, if it's going 16,000 miles an hour? I'm going to repeat that for the debunkers. They are on record saying that SBIRS uses low Earth orbit satellites. On record. That's what that Wall Street Journal piece says. But everyone wants to know, well, the satellites are moving too fast. How could they take images? Well, it's pretty damn simple because they're scanning the Earth and they're sending the data to a computer system that creates a 3D, or just maybe not 3D, but video Google Earth playback. We deduced it. It's real. We have all the evidence we need to prove it. So how could we have produced all this evidence if those videos are fake? How would we have figured all this out just from 2 videos if the videos are fake? So which hoaxer knew about all this stuff to make all these details line up 10 years ago? Nobody. Videos have to be real. Simple as that. Debunkers are going back on the suicide watch, folks. Back on the suicide watch. Okay. Next thing. Can we FOIA the satellite imagery? No, we cannot. It's classified. You can't FOIA anything that's classified. I mean, we can try, but I've already FOIA'd USA 229. I FOIA'd USA 229 back in September, along with MH370 to the NRO. I got a technical rejection saying it would take over 20 days. That was 4 months ago, and I've gotten nothing back. So, I mean, we can, but we get rejected for everything. But yes, I did FOIA USA 229. So anyone who now continues to make the false claims that satellites can't work like that or whatever it is, we have absolute proof they're wrong now. No more bullshit about satellites moving too fast. No more nonsense about any of that. It's all been disproven 100%. Debunkers, balls in your court. Okay. Malcolm Bendall. I got in touch with George Howard today, who knows Malcolm Bendall as well as Randall Carlson. Had an awesome talk with him. Situation, this is just going to be a brief intro to this discussion. I'm not going to dig too much into it, but it's a small world is what I'll say. And it's even smaller when it comes to this technology. I'm now 110% sure that there's technology that can change the whole planet, and it's just simply people don't realize that it's real. And people get discredited for nonsense that's not true, and that's how the stuff gets kept hidden. It's not even a matter of proving the stuff's real. It is real. It's a matter of getting people to wake up. That's really just the reality. And I'm looking forward to potentially talking with people like Randall Carlson, Malcolm Bendall, etc. in the future. I just don't even care at all about what the detractors say anymore. It just doesn't matter. If people want to go back to sleep and live in their world of, cable news and bullshit politics, go nuts, man. It's completely irrelevant to me at this point. Yeah, a lot of people got to see it to believe it. Well, reality is you're seeing it on 2 videos, right? If you expect that you're going to have a front row seat to watching a plane disappear by some orbs, you're going to die, unfortunately, without ever knowing the truth. I don't mean to be rude, but that's just the reality of the situation, right? Not every single thing that's out there are you going to be able to see firsthand. Now, when it comes to stuff about the thunderstorm generator, which somebody just mentioned, that kind of stuff you might be able to see, yes, because it's public information. It's not classified or whatever else. It's actually public information. I would say, here's my advice. I'm not going to go into depth on it. You probably want to check out the thunderstorm generator, guys. Probably want to go check it out. I think it's legit. That's what I'm going to say. Yusuf asks, Ashton, how do you discover this footage? Why did it only get discovered in the last few months? Genuinely curious. Actually, it has been out there for 10 years. I did not discover it. I'm not the person who discovered it. I'm just the person who has been promoting it. I'm just the person who's been promoting it. Back in August, I saw these videos, and I had seen the drone one, the thermal video. I had seen this back in 2014, and back then, I was a CNN brain back then. I had looked at it one time and didn't know what I was looking at. I just thought this was some weird, fake, corny video game, right, back then. And I looked at it again in 2023 in August, and I went, oh, wait a minute. That's a drone. I went, this is a FLIR footage, but it's got blue on it. And then I saw the second video, which was this one. Actually, I saw the side-by-side one. And I went, wait a minute. There's 2 videos in perfect synchronization. And then somebody posted this one. You can see them in both perfect synchronization. I went, holy crap. These might be the best UFO videos in the history of the world. And so I started following the investigation. I started posting about it on Twitter. And now we're at where we're at now. I had, in August, I had 30 followers on Twitter. Most of them were fake. And now I've got almost, I think, 79,000 followers right now. And that's how the reason why I became this person is simply because I chose to be somebody who put myself out there, that I gave out my name, my real identity. I chose not to be anonymous because I realized that there's no way to disclose this while being anonymous. You have to be somebody who's willing to be attacked. And of course, that's exactly what has happened, but it's fine. I knew that's what would occur. Now, I didn't know I would get attacked as hard as I've gotten by people, and including like podcasters and stuff like that who've just come after me. But it's a learning process for me as well. I'm just a normal person who's trying to figure this all out like you guys are. Yeah, it's crazy how this has been in the public for years, never picked up. But the reality is, if you look at it, of course you can see why, right? It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. When I stared at it, I went, wait a minute. Like, how can this be real? It took me 2 weeks to come to terms with this potentially being real, where we might actually be able to teleport an airplane. 2 weeks for me to come to terms with it. And I'm the guy telling people it's real. So I don't blame anybody for thinking it's fake or whatever, but it's too many small details, man. And all the physicists and engineers that I've been talking to, at least, say that it confirms what they've seen, what their theories are, and that's probably some of the most compelling parts about it. So, okay, we can talk more about this stuff a little later. I want to jump on this space and listen in to the Skyfire News stuff that's out there. Yeah, the moment I saw two different angles, like Rotary says, that's when I was in. But the time where I was really convinced is when people put together the fact that what you're seeing here with this mouse that comes on the screen right here in the top right, this mouse is consistent with a Citrix session. This means somebody's actually logged into a database while they're recording this, and it's not the full screen. This is a cropped screen recording, which is why you don't see the drone. When I saw that detail, I went, holy crap, this is a real person that leaked this, and it's probably a U.S. military personnel. Because I knew that probably like the U.S. government, just like big companies, probably use Citrix. And if they use Citrix, then this is consistent with how you would pull satellite data from a computer in like Utah while you're on an airplane or in Iraq or anywhere else, right? Is you log into a remote session, a Citrix session. And when I saw that detail, I went, okay, nobody's faking that into their fake video. Nobody's faking that, right? So pretty wild. Meteor has a metal samples analyzed by senior IBM samples. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means, man. Yeah, Don Lemon, it is kind of a black hole, but it's also not. It's technically not a black hole, but it's really weird that Don Lemon talks about the black hole thing. Very, very weird. When I saw this flash accurately illuminate the clouds as well, that's another indication that what we were looking at was real here. I mean, look at this. Do you really think this is a graphic that accurately illuminates the clouds? Nah, man. No CGI videos of this quality, period. Not even the major studios can make videos that are this high quality. Okay, let's jump into the space. We can do more questions and stuff like that in a little bit. Where's the Skyfire? Here it is.
I totally agree. I think it would totally be used as like a way, and that's what
Jesse Michels
people who
is
don't
in
know.
here?
The book Chains of the Sea. When Lou Elizondo was on his podcast tour, he was asked what fiction book does he feel represents the phenomena well, and he said this book called Chains of the Sea, which not many people had heard about or talked about at that point. And basically, one thing that it has that other UFO books don't have is that there's a really big AI component. And
a quick thanks to Skyfire News and all you guys that are associated with it. And thanks to Jesse and Curt, obviously, for a lot of the excellent media work they've been doing for the last few years, tackling UFOs and, wider phenomena and science topics. On the AI and aliens, particularly AI in alien technosignature research, there's a couple of things that to touch
Dalton,
on.
when was that?
Some of
How do I
you
find the link to
probably
it?
know Gabriel de la Torre and his team over in Spain, and they've been doing really cool work with like AI, applied to technosignature research, particularly the study they did with using an AI tool that was learning from astronomical images, and that they run through images through there, so it just learning, and then it was applied to images from Ceres and the dwarf planet Ceres, and what it found was an anomaly in the Occator crater, which is this area where you've got this luminous area in the Occator crater, which is very weird anyway. But inside of one of these luminous spots in this crater, there appeared to be geometry. So you had this, like I said, triangle with a square and a circle inside of it, basically like the alchemical symbol, which is like super weird. And so anyway, it found this, and then they had independently they had volunteers look at these images to see, you know, what do humans think compared to what the AI thinks, right? And so the humans also saw geometry. Now the interesting thing was the pushback on that from sort of mainstream scientists was that, well, yeah, you know, but it's a kind of pareidolia that's being programmed in because humans have that failing, that our AI tools will have that failing given to them by us. So there's a kind of a closed door there of accepting things that the AI might bring out. And one of the points he kind of makes as well, that Gabriel makes, is that, you know, the AI may find things that we aren't ready for and that we aren't ready to even see. Be a spicy stream. And you know, he's gone on to do more work with series as well, where they found there's an anomalous kind of hill there, which again may not be natural. So he's found other things. But I think it's a really interesting point that, you know, even if the AI does find things, if we're not ready to see those things, we have, you know, easy to jump to kind of explanations for why the AI is hallucinating, right? Because it's made by us and that we are flawed, right? So I think that's kind of interesting. And even without the AI, I see the similar thing with, you know, the work I've done, obviously with the, you know, my paper on tektites and stuff that's saying that, you know, suggesting that we have fragments of a alien AI craft on Earth. You know, the counter arguments haven't really come in to dispute that. Rather, there's the inability for scientists to expand their mind to even consider that as a serious hypothesis. They prefer to stick with that. We don't understand this material, have thumbs up capability, but one day we will. But it can't be what he's suggesting, because again, aliens aren't here. They haven't come here. So again, so you have these kind of closed doors. If we're not ready to see something, it doesn't matter if the AI finds it. It doesn't matter if, you know, humans find it. That there's always going to be that kind of counter argument that will close the door a priori. Right?
I hate these recordings. Let's just talk.
The other thing, very quickly, on a separate topic, you were talking about earlier about disinfo. I think it was very interesting that when TTSA got going, there was an interview with Tom DeLonge. I think it was with.
Okay, I'm going to mute this for a sec.
Trying to think of the platform. Anyway, major sort of platform when they were first kind of setting up, and he was explaining how, you know, his insiders
Bruce is
agreed
talking?
that, you know, he'd be able to bring out, you know, loads of secrets and stuff, but on the condition that he mixed it with fiction.
A lot. He's a good guy.
And I thought it's kind of funny, you know, not really sort of seeing that you're basically saying up front that, yes, I'm going to be sort of running a kind of misinformation campaign for these insiders. You know what I mean? It's kind of wild that wasn't really pushed back on and challenged a lot more at the beginning, because you know, that's really the problem that we have in the field.
Hit the like button
in general,
so people watch this. This is going to be a good space.
So often people are given a kind of a mixture of what is likely true facts, but just mixed in with just rubbish, and then so in the end it sort of poisons the well so badly, because you can't figure, you know, do I keep some of this? Do you throw it all away? You know, because, you know, some of it's bad. And so that's been part of what's been happening since 2017 and the whole kind of, you know, I guess, reawakening of the UFO topic. So right from the beginning there, that was kind of upfront told to us that we were going to be getting this mixture of a story and some kind of revelation. So yeah, you know, so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's a great point, Bruce.
Real quick, Red.
Jesse and Curt.
I wanted to say something.
I want to be talking
Bruce, you brought up something that reminded me of something that was said today in Jesse and Curt's episode, and that was like the idea of hallucinations, or we might not be able to see something necessarily, even if we're showing it. Reminds me of
Okay, I'm going to answer the question, why am I allowed to talk about this? So if you go back to what Amy in her stream was saying, the one stream that we posted, the reality is if they're letting you talk about it, then they probably want it out. So that's the most likely reason. The other reason is most likely because what we're doing with this grassroots movement like this has never been done before. So they don't know how to react to this. What they're trying to do is they're trying to send the debunkers out there to make people stop paying attention. That's what they're doing about it, right? Now, if you expect them to kill me or something, how does that solve the problem? That just makes it 10,000 times worse. If I were to disappear, this thing is going to go mainstream, right? Too many people would know. So that's the answer to your question. Why are they allowing me? The answer is they're not, but they're not also stopping me as well.
And if you can figure out in some hypothetical future a way to manipulate them. Like right now, you can use neurons to do super basic computational tasks like stabilize inverted pendulums or like play Pong. And if in the future that progresses, I think you could end up with like these like biological drones, and then maybe it is like the Mike Masters thing where you're like,
We're Rona. They're not going to be able to explain it.
Timelines by like sending.
I think they're letting us wake people up.
Question, Tupa. I think I do think we have an interface through which we sense reality. It's a very limited scope, whether that be like the 400 to 700 nanometers of the electromagnetic wave spectrum, or auditory, analog to that or whatever, in the decibel range. There's all sorts of stuff.
I figured it was you, Trajan.
Outside of that,
don't DM me a lot.
If the Penrose like microtubules thing is right, I think maybe what we're doing is we're constantly picking sort of eigenstates, like we're collapsing like the wave function like all the time, and which is maybe a somewhat heretical thing to now say in quantum physics, but like every initial quantum physicist to Schrodinger himself entertained this stuff. And then maybe when you're in a heightened state of consciousness, you are in this more literally like probabilistic world where like Zeno's arrow of time does not apply or something. So like maybe if you think about us as having a limited scope in terms of sight and hearing, maybe we have a limited scope in terms of time too. And I have no idea if Hoffman at all talks about that, but that would be my strong instinct.
Well, very interesting. Something else that happened this week. We'll just kind of go through some more of these happenings of the week. And I'm curious for Jesse and Curt's take on this, as you guys both do like science separate of UFO type content as well. There's been this kind of growing schism, I feel like, with Gary Nolan publicly calling out Neil deGrasse Tyson. So he did that like last week, and he did another one this week that James Fox posted. I'll just play it, and then I'm curious what you guys think about how we address mainstream science and what people like Neil deGrasse Tyson's role.
God, these got to go away, man. Keemstar is what I should look for. There it is. This way we can put our hand up.
Listen to what he says. I don't think he should be respected because I don't think he's acting in the best.
Dude, do we really have to listen to these clips, man? Can we just talk about it? Everybody either knows or they don't know about the situation.
A tribunal of could you take away somebody's PhD? Does anyone listen to him? Don't ask me.
There we go. Now I can see hands. Alien goes in here. Logan.
He should be stripped of his PhD.
Wow, so there you go. Stripped of his PhD and everything. Tribunal, I think he said at one point.
Yeah, that's the tribunal got me. That one.
Bro, every time I hear that clip, I just burst out laughing because it's so like brutal, right? Like I get Gary Nolan's point, right? Neil doesn't even come to the stage to have the argument whether or not, what are we seeing in the sky? He doesn't even have the conversation. He immediately shuts it down. Like, aliens are thousands of light years away. There's no possibility. He won't even have the conversation. So I understand the frustration, but Gary went way too far, way too far.
Yeah, right. Like, why is he saying to like strip his PhD? It doesn't seem like middle school level drama. Like, it seems like a little too much for me. I'm kind of curious what people like Curt think about that.
I unfortunately am going to not comment on this. Who knows if I'll be hosting a debate between them, and so it's just best for me to stay out of this situation.
Well played, Curt.
Well played, Curt. That is between them as consenting adults.
Yes, right? And they should be able to have that debate, too, on neutral ground. I remember one time I collected a series of clips of scientists kind of mocking the UFO field. And it ended up being a compilation of Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye the Science Guy. And I will say that after watching it, I was like, you could kind of rally with Nolan on that. Because they're so dismissive. That's my real name. But I think some of the times they're giving these talks, they're almost like doing bits, right? They're performing a little bit on the stage, like a bit. And they're getting laughter out of the crowd, and they're really playing to it. And I think that has to be considered as well. But yeah, the idea of him bloviating, like that's Yeah. Really
Jesse, what are your thoughts? Are you going to go to the Gary Nolan?
Maybe I'll be a little more controversial and just say, like,
oh yeah, here we go.
I mean, Gary can be a little spicy, kind of, he can be a bit dramatic, but like,
I wish I could make this full screen.
I agree with the sentiment.
Oh, wait,
like, the guy shouldn't be necessarily stripped of his PhD, but like, he doesn't do any fundamental science. He hasn't contributed to. He's literally just an establishment spokesperson who does not push the field forward at all. And I actually, because Grush challenged him to a debate on my show, and so I tried to make that happen through like an intermediary.
No chance.
And you know what Neil deGrasse Tyson's response was? It was like, I cannot have a debate about anything where the data is classified. And that's so lazy because there's tons of open source data. There's a lot of open source data that you can discuss. Like, you're just closed off. Like, you're just not open to it. Like, you're a priori just completely skeptical of this thing, which is fine. You can say that. But like, to say that there's nothing you can debate, I think is absolutely ridiculous. And it's also the purpose of science to speculate and to debate the speculative. You're literally like serving no societal function if you're just going to wait like the average citizen waits for full government disclosure. You're just abdicating your position. And then the final thing I'll say, which is kind of a weird fact, but I think Neil deGrasse Tyson is like a Freemason in some lodge in like Albany, New York. And so like, somebody who can be like that involved in like something that, kind of kooky and esoteric, whatever. I'm interested in a lot of that stuff. It's like, I'm not criticizing it, but it's like, you're into that, and then you're like in total denial of like the reality of UFOs. I just don't understand that. That feels like there's some cognitive dissonance going on. So like,
and there's a direct line back to you could go Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye, Carl Sagan, Hynek, Menzel. Like, there's always been a prominent debunker on your TV, and there's literally like a direct line that you could like, all the people like within the line knew each other and mentored the next one, kind of thing. We got Deep Prasad up here. He's been on Jesse Michels' show. I think he's been on Curt too. AI and Science. Deep, what is your take on the Gary Nolan tribunal for
I stuffed my own.
Tyson? Do you support that?
Fan from
Before you speak, Deep, firstly, like, hi, Deep. Sorry that I gotta get going, Jesse, and and Sam, and I appreciate everyone being here, and I think you all should check out Jesse's channel, and check out Deep's work, and check out Red Panda Koala's channel, and Alien Girl is here, I see. Check out all these people. And Jesse, next time I'll sit on your couch properly.
You did. You sat on it perfectly.
That was hilarious, man. I just keep laughing and reading the comments. People are like, "You're sitting like Spider-Man at the edge of a building."
You know what? You did better than Martin Shkreli, who was trying to hide his ankle monitor the entire time. So
I don't know why I was like that. I think I did need to use the washroom. Maybe I don't remember.
I
don't
thought
know.
you crushed it, man, and I was an honor to do it. And yeah,
someone said it's like a seductive vampire.
It's the couch, dude. I was thinking about that actually. I was watching today too, because I sat on the couch too. It has really big cushions, but like the back support is like far away. So you like sink into the couch, so you got to like lean forward to kind of balance.
Surprised Keemstar's being
so
quiet.
But I was
and also then at the same time you have to think about how you're oriented toward the camera and simultaneously orient yourself toward the guest, and so balancing all three was quite difficult. But it was a great conversation, man. And next time we'll have an even better one. I look forward to it.
Can't wait for the next one.
Thank you, Curt.
Sorry, Curt.
Oh, no worries, brother. You're good. Much love.
All right, take care. Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Good night. Yeah, Red, I was just going to say, I haven't yet been on Curt's show, but certainly with Jesse, and that was, man, plenty of fun. Yeah, regarding Neil's tribunal, I think Gary's onto something at a meta level. So I like this idea. Like, humor me this for a second. Imagine if, not just for Neil, but for anyone who has a PhD, there was a rule where if you stop practicing science for, let's say, 5 years, right, you get stripped of your PhD. I feel like that would like keep people in check. If you go back even 100 years during like the Richard Feynman era, Feynman got his PhD in 3 years. Of course, part of it was, sort of fast tracked because of the war times and so on. But back then, having a PhD was the ultimate sort of academic show of scholarship. And you had to be so dedicated to get one. And it meant, your entire life.
What is this guy doing? Is he outside somewhere?
By the book, right? And you absolutely fought with the sword of science.
Well, there's a lot of haters in
the second you stop doing that, after a while, you become more of an entertainer, to Gary's point.
And let's say we're on the other end of this, and these people are the ones who, right? I feel like there is going to be some kind of like low-key tribunal people will want from someone, right? That's why they're doing the whole amnesty stuff. Yeah. What about you, Ashton? What do you think? Are you going to go to the tribunal?
Sorry, what tribunal? You lost me.
How do you think the current scientific establishment should be treated? Given that there is this kind of cover-up in place as we go through disclosure.
Yeah, I mean, and this is funny. People are going to hate on me, but I go back to the person who's become my friend, a guy named Jake Chansley. I think some of you guys know him as the Q shaman. But he surprised me in his interactions with me when I first talked to him, which was that I said that this is an information war and we have to treat it like that. And he came back and said, no, I don't want to have it be adversarial. The way that we should treat it is like the new guard is simply obsoleting the old, right? And we can't make it an adversarial relationship like that. I think it's just a matter of there's going to be a handoff from the old guard of UFOlogy and physics to the people who are younger, who look at the same physics, the old physics, through a new lens. They look through the same UFOlogy through a new lens as well. I think those will be the ones to bring into the future. I even look at people like Jesse, who's in the chat right now, and the people he's been talking to, and just how much Jesse impresses me in general with his knowledge of science. And I kind of look up to that. I'm trying to emulate that a little bit myself in terms of figuring out how the science works. That's my opinion.
I like that.
It sounds kind of like cancel culture to me. I don't like it at all, stripping people of their degrees and whatnot. I think you simply win by, Gary Nolan bringing more and more data to the public, which he has vowed publicly to do, and to get to the bottom of this. That's how you win. No one needs to be stripped. And at the end of the day, if Gary Nolan does that, then Neil looks pretty bad in front of the entire public and loses a bit of his credibility. Credibility's on the line, I would say.
I agree with Keemstar here. He's got some pretty good takes.
Let the best ideas and the best evidence win.
100%.
Right, somewhat, Keem. I would just caveat that with I doubt his credibility will get hit that much, because if we look at other gurus who have been wrong, Robert Kiyosaki, right, Rich Dad Poor Dad, has famously called the last 80 recessions, right, in the last decade, but people still look up to him.
Yeah, I like what Ashton brought up with what American Shaman said, and I agree. I've expressed a sentiment of there's this animosity people have, and I get it because they've had experiences, right? And when people are ridiculing it, it makes sense. But I feel like there should be a sense of compassion for these people, like Neil, even, who he's gonna take. I mean, it's to the skeptics, we sound like we're coping, right? But he's gonna take a pretty big L. It seems like coming up here soon. In similar ways that maybe some of these COVID scientists did and whatnot, and try and have empathy for them, and especially all the people who look up to them and view them as a reliable source of information. It's disclosure has so many different mind, where it breaks your mind, and one of them is just that information is allowed to be controlled to a degree where you can believe things that aren't true.
Sure.
What are the chances that the answer,
I talked to him on the phone a while
in
back
this
for a couple hours
post-disclosure world, the answer is stranger than
smart
even
dude,
the
really
believers
smart.
have ever thought,
especially for someone so
right?
young.
And what are the chances that we all have a kind of come to Jesus?
Yeah, it's funny. Mystical just said the same thing.
You know what I mean? Kind of a moment where we're like, oh, we were all a little off there. You know what I mean? Because if it's aliens and egg on, Neil deGrasse Tyson's face, right? But if it's more akin to something like
who doesn't like Paul Oscar,
right, which is what he said, is if these are aliens from another planet, I'm going to be disappointed because I think the truth could be much more interesting. And what is more interesting? The idea that these entities or things or forms are around engaging in interaction with us to affect our culture? That's very strange. And why? What's their motivation? How long have they been doing that? You know, what is a goal? Like, when will they be satisfied with their efforts? Like, all these things kind of come out from it, where if it's just aliens visiting from another planet, kind of we all figured out resources or something. But yeah, I think that's a great question about like what does this look like in a post-disclosure world? What do all these skeptics do? What do all these entertainment scientists do? But yeah, again, we have to kind of prepare as believers or people who think there's a there. We got to prepare that we don't have all the questions even to have asked and to look for the right answers. But real quick, we got Bruce and then Logan.
And real quick too, remind everyone, follow Skyfire News for updates on news and all things UFO on every platform. Bruce.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of the way scientists interact and debate, you know, because of having followed particularly anthropology and of course the tech type sciences, you know, following a number of scientists quite closely and a number of debates closely, one thing I've come to accept as though science moves forward with discoveries, you know, and interesting questions, but also it moves forward with aggressive internal debate and even attacks between different scientists with opposing positions, and that sometimes may look kind of vicious, but at the same time, in destroying their opponent's position, you know, even if aggressively, they are furthering science. And that, you know, so we have said that part of this human nature of sometimes the one academic wanting just to prove the other guy's wrong because he doesn't like him, you know, that if he fails to prove it wrong, he strengthens that opponent's position, right? If he does prove it wrong, he shows that we need to move forward in the science, right? So although that can look kind of nasty and maybe we prefer to see just the friendlier interactions, you know, I don't think it's a part of science we can just sort of say, like, let's get rid of that. I mean, because that can be an important driver in moving forward. Is those kind of animosities between great thinkers. And if you look at the history of science, that's actually kind of normal. So I'm not saying, and I wouldn't say we need to strip anyone's PhD, but the provoking each other to debate. You
got to do science, not just name call.
You know, the sparring and jousting, the gentleman's combat, right? You know, that kind of side of science is important. It's part of us, and you know, we're not robots just doing kind of logical analysis type stuff all the time, right? We have emotions, and that does come into the, you know, the academic community, and you see that if you follow in any particular areas of scientific, you know, kind of cutting edge science, that's how things move on. And so I don't think that's a bad position. I know as well, somewhat playing to the crowd, of course, as well, gets people's interest into a topic. And again, say Neil deGrasse Tyson is a very public person, so obviously provoking him somewhat to join in a kind of a bit of sparring, you know, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. You know, obviously it's kind of encouraging that to happen. And, you know, we'd all love to see great minds sparring on these topics. So it's not just a case of scientists picking on outsiders and saying, you know, these scientists are dismissive to the UFO community or the paranormal community. So they're also dismissive to each other. That's what I'm getting at. So they can also say, you know what, that guy might have a PhD, but I think he's an idiot. Right? So that's part of it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say the conflict is important, right? I mean, conflict's important, and even if you look at stuff like this is somewhat controversial about wars in general. A lot of the wars is how we've had such huge amounts of advancement, is when you have this like force of like kind of requirement to evolve or get better. Now, I think that where you have to draw the line on conflict is that it's not just name calling, right? Where you're actually producing evidence, where you're having reasoned debate. And that's actually just throw a little kind of a praise to Keemstar. Honestly, I think Keemstar, a lot of people, you know, see him as this drama person, but he's actually really good at moderating debates with people, getting the ideas out there and letting them kind of float on their own. With respect to Gary Nolan, it feels like, and I'll let you jump in, Keemstar, in just a sec, but like you said about playing to the crowd, it feels like a little bit like that, a little bit of pageantry involved in it as well, which I think, you know, sure, maybe get some views on you, but it doesn't really advance the discussion very much.
Yeah, like, you know, I see this happen every day in this space, but just for an example today, Matt Ford and Green Street were like going back with petty insults back and forth. And I love that stuff. Don't get me wrong, but let's get these two guys in a conversation and let's have these real ideas and real theories and real journalism battle each other to find truth, right? Like that's what this whole movement's about, right? Finding the truth. And it's really hard to get these guys to come talk to each other. It's a lot of blocking, and it's a lot of like the access game I'm seeing in this space, right? The bunkers and the believers, they don't actually speak to each other. It's so frustrating.
Dude, that's what makes spaces so great. I love that. Like, I remember I had like a disagreement with somebody. I think it was Othello was his name.
I love that.
And I invited him into my space, and it turns out, we really didn't disagree at all. That's what makes spaces so great. Like, everyone should just be able to communicate that way.
Yeah, just very quickly, if you're not familiar with Thomas Kuhn's work on paradigms and the way they interact, that it's actually normal that people in opposing paradigms talk past each other, not with each other. So what looks like them having some kind of debate to many onlookers isn't really. It's one essentially telling the other one he's wrong while screening out what they're saying back to them, and the other one doing the same thing. And that in the end, paradigms rarely change because one of those people bests the other and he admits he's wrong and joins the other side. That's not really, if you look at the history of science, that's a super rare outcome. And that's why if you look at it, really, it's more that one side, loses power as people die off, and it's the younger people have already accepted the new ideas, and those new ideas become more prevalent, and the old guard kind of basically die off, or there's a vested interest for them to change sides. It's very rare that someone who's held dear beliefs in their field and has built their whole career on a premise will then listen to a completely different paradigms view and take it seriously and look to see whether they're actually wrong. It does happen, but look at the history of science, and again, look at Thomas Kuhn's work on paradigm shifts and how they occur. And yet, talking past each other is normal. I don't think you're going to get Green Street and people that essentially are believers, like pretty hardcore believers that particularly in the belief that there's this progress happening, this process from the government that they're going to release a saucer at some point. If you're sort of in that camp, then Green Street is not going to be able to hear you any more than that person's going to hear him. That's just reality.
Yeah, I think we have made a mark in the community.
Yeah, this is a great segue. I think
less and less
we
hatred.
talk about this Neil deGrasse Tyson stuff. There was a Skyfire News exclusive this week where we asked him about what he has planned with the Soul Foundation and whatnot, right? And I feel like this is one of these concrete, tangible things we see people trying to do, and credit to them, right? Trying to mainstream science-ify this subject. Here's what Gary said in the Skyfire News exclusive. Hey, this is Red for Skyfire News. Congratulations on making the Soul Foundation. My question is, does the Soul Foundation have any projects, plans,
Red Panda
or
is such a
goals
nerd, though. I love him,
for
though.
2024?
I mean, I am too.
And also, what is it like working with David Grush, and Carl Nell, and what are your guys' roles within the organization?
Well, let's see. I mean, I think our goals in the near future, and Peter Skafish is running, let's say, the academic arm of this, which is to basically instigate a number of papers and basically policy papers that will be coming out, and we hope to get them out.
I want to get some more out of
once
Deep
a month,
and Jesse. I want
with
them to
a pretty
talk some
good
more.
drumbeat. And they're, these are aimed at, again, like I said before, about littering the.
I didn't watch the Jesse Michels thing yet, so I don't have any good questions.
These, let's say, dry papers.
Chad, if anyone watched the Jesse Michels, Kurt Jermangle thing, what questions do we have? What were they talking about?
Realm later, and they also get served
guys,
up to Congress.
Is it Ashton on the stream?
And so that's really the most immediate thing. Dave and I are working on basically bringing together volunteers and putting together a little volunteer army.
I got to get contacts.
People, because we can't do everything. And so we're still organizing that. We want to organize the organizers. So that's probably the most immediate future. Dave is fantastic to work with. I mean, you just got to know
Ashton
the
Powers.
sincerity of the man.
I got to get my
when you get to
Four
know
Orbs
him,
thing.
It's just like
the problem is it's going to dangle.
Someone like this spend basically his whole life
plug it in down there
doing this because it has so much detriment to him. If he were
the Curt stream was good.
blind.
Yeah, Kimberly, give us some cliff notes.
It's great to
what
work
should we
with.
ask about? What were the topics?
And Carl as well. I mean, Carl's just the two of them.
Dave Rossi's
are spectacular.
Possibly my favorite person on the planet.
So I actually feel kind of strangely blessed to be associated with these people, and we're all learning from each other. Mostly what I'm learning are all these acronyms. You know, when Carl and Dave get talking about all these programs and policy things, that just the acronyms fly like I've never seen before. But I mean, they know their stuff.
I wish I could make this bigger.
Would love to see the three of them, or the two of them, and Sean Kirkpatrick in a room. And
what all these buttons do,
I think it would be somebody would be left in a puddle of goo.
Ooh, kind of intense there. And I want to shoot it to Deep and Jesse, because you guys both were at the Soul Foundation conference, and there wasn't any. They still haven't put out those videos yet, so they're kind of like there's all this mystery around it. So what was it like actually going there before we get into talking about Soul as a bigger thing?
I saw Jeremy just retweeted us.
Honestly, it felt like a bit of a family reunion. And you know how you can have sometimes a strange family member?
Dave can't be VP, he's like, Canadian.
All right, 2 people here are definitely blocked or have blocked me at some point. But no, dude, it was great to like see, you know, the homies. You know, Jacques Ferlet was out there, and of course Gary, and it was nice to meet Peter as well. I really learned. I think one of the biggest takeaways was Carl Nell's talk, right? And
Rossi versus Reese,
you know,
maybe.
Speaking, this goes back to what Jesse was talking about earlier about how it's one thing to wait on, you know, Uncle Sam and the government to sort of get their shit together.
Why are there 2 doctor screens?
Literally spoon feed us, right? The most technologically and scientifically valuable breakthroughs on the planet. That's never happened. If we look at current trends and trajectories, like what OpenAI has successfully done with artificial intelligence or SpaceX with
I join Space Force?
Technologies and so on and so forth. It's really private companies today
for
that are leading the charge of being able to develop science and a frontier, you know, engineering on top of that.
I'm still waiting for hey, Solar Marshal, there you are.
That's what's probably going to have to happen here too, where it's civilians that have to come up with a solution and literally hand it to the government on a silver platter. That was my personal takeaway. But I'm just glad I didn't get kicked out for accidentally, you know.
I've said I would.
Slides, so yeah.
Yeah, that's worth noting. That was the rumor about you, right? What actually happened there? Let's get the Skyfire News exclusive. What happened?
I've said I would sell out.
Got kicked out of Soul Foundation.
For sure. I've been waiting for the government to call me.
What was the truth there?
Yeah. So first of all, you know, I will preempt this. I did not get kicked out. You know.
Maybe I shouldn't say that aloud.
But yeah. So I was actually at Starbase,
Stratton and Jeremy Corbell
the night before.
On here, if Asher wants
just
us.
like checking out the Starship, you know, rocket factory and so on. And I just made a last-minute decision to, you know, go to Starbase. I was actually going to go to Seoul the whole time for the whole weekend, but you know, I missed the day as a result. Took a red-eye flight, came back, reached Seoul, and I showed up late, right, by like at least like half an hour or so. And I totally missed the announcement
I don't see a Dan
on the second day that you weren't allowed to take any pictures. So the funny part is like
hey,
when I went to sit down,
Dirty,
I literally
what's going
just
on,
like
man?
blatantly, because I had again no fucking idea, right, that you're not allowed to take pictures. Took pictures, and no one said anything. That's the crazy part. Like there's random people on Reddit claiming,
sure.
"Oh yeah, I sat behind Deep."
But yeah, I wouldn't be selling out to
S23's point. I was like, bullshit. Like someone would have said something. You know, if you were actually that like interested.
Trying to get the information out there. I mean, it's not easy. So most people aren't going to believe it no matter what.
And then about an hour later, Jay King, right, or Jay Christopher, he comes up to me and he's like, you know, kind of like the vibe was kind of like you're in trouble, right? Like you're a kid on
the podcasts are picking up again, a lot of requests,
that type of deal. You know, so like, look, there's a policy. It's the only policy that we had that Soul had. Right, which is not
trying to only do like 3 a week if I can avoid it.
To media, social media. So.
You're Dan.
He said the organizer wants to talk to me. Spoke to the conference organizer. He was super chill about it. Explained the policy, and I started, you know, profusely apologizing. And Gary walks in, right, and right before Gary walked in, by the way, he had literally said to everyone in the crowd that he had just been told and made aware that someone leaked the photos, right, of some of these things, and that Stanford Security is going to escort that person out. So I was like, yo, mentally, I was like, dude, this is what I took a flight for. Like, I'm about to get kicked out of Stanford campus, you know, just like this is so not worth it, you know. Like there's so many other things I could have been doing that aren't this bad in terms of outcomes. But anyways, it was all good, dude. Gary walked out. I explained.
No, I would love to be an advocate for disclosure.
That was me. And immediately
I would go about it a
down,
different way than
like,
everybody else.
I was like, yeah, I did not know. And he was like,
assuming that they allow you to.
Don't you worry about it. And dude, yeah, he was so sweet about it. It was chill. But yeah,
that's cool.
A bunch of, like,
I would consider myself an ambassador.
Just try to make a big deal, of course, and try to claim
That's
that I got
probably
kicked
proper
out.
term.
That was the story, dude. Deep Prasad got kicked out of Soul Foundation by Gary Nolan.
Dude,
was what was going around.
Bro, they wish. But yeah, drama. I mean, I guess.
When I start giving announcements for announcements, you guys will know about.
Jesse, how was it for you? And I'm curious what you think of the whole kind of secrecy, because we're meaning about it, but it is kind of an interesting thing, right? No pictures are allowed. That's kind of
make another
a little
martini
spooky,
here.
seems.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think it was.
They could be plasma solar. 100%.
Awesome to have all these.
Bob Grenier thinks they're plasma. I think. I mean, there's definitely a field
and validating of the field in like this really cool way.
Jesse says
I'm not one for credentialism. I'm kind of anti that, but it was cool to like Stanford University having like a UFO conference, and, like Hal put
anti-credentialism.
What a nice guy. And you have all these sort of legendary figures. I think it was.
Yeah, I don't understand why none of the families have reached out either.
Sort of thinking. I think if you were like a fly on the wall, given your knowledge read, like it might have been somewhat. You would have been maybe proud of how far the field has gone, as I was, but maybe it might have been slightly anticlimactic or something as far as actually learning incrementally new
your glasses
knowledge.
Don't work.
But the way in which I think it might have been slightly spooky.
You should go back to the eye doctor.
I don't know. Some people might have slipped in there that were from various deep organizations. Was my sense, and so that that's an interesting dynamic always. I think the best parts of conferences like that are like hallway conversations where you can get really water cooler conversations or whatever. You get really deep with like a specific person, and you're not kind of drinking from a fire hose in the like main room. And I don't know, like I got to I got lunch with Ross Coulthart, and like he has like a specific style on camera, and so I honestly didn't know what to make of him kind of from afar, and I was like wildly impressed by his historical knowledge. So yeah, I don't know, I thought that was pretty cool.
99% sure Ross Coulthart is part of the slow disclosure process.
I think
99% sure.
I guess we can discuss this because it came out that like the slot, Carl Nell's sort of timeline and Deep's point is a really important one, which is like even from like a defense standpoint, like you have this like really unstable multipolar world. If the U.S. government is housing any technology where like not that much progress has been,
I think I'm 99% sure Ross sold out.
You can't really have like it's
just based on
in these like sort of
how he acts.
Super compartmentalized.
People are on TV all the time.
Gray-beard departments.
It's an influencer.
Of various private corporations that aren't like the source of the last 15 to 20 years of like frontier defense R&D. Like they're just like new companies, it's you're not talking about like SpaceX and Anduril and like these new, it's like these like really old stodgy primes. And so I sort of hinted at it in my documentary with Grush, but I personally think, and I haven't gotten like confirmation on this, but I personally think that's part of the push for disclosure is like,
there's your cloud movement right there.
Progress on this, like people have to be aware.
Realize
of,
this is only like 4 seconds.
Ontological truth here.
Right.
Yeah.
Jesse, you in the interview today, you mentioned the 4 horsemen of like religion, right? With Richard Dawkins, and whatnot. I'm curious. Do you
person asking about the cloud movement?
Do you have the 4 horsemen of like skepticism? Like,
hopefully you caught
what
that.
Scientists, what researchers are going to, put an end to the debate?
Yeah, that's funny. That's so interesting. Well, see, I think like the 4 horsemen, like Dawkins, Harris, Dennett, and Hitchens, those guys were all actually kind of probably interesting, healthy correctives in their time to like religious dogmatism. And then now I would say like their sort of rationalism is like super insufficient. Agreed. And like in terms of providing meaning for your life. But like I would actually like rank Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I'm not saying this as like an ad hominem attack against him. I mean, maybe it sort of ends up being this de facto, but it's like the problem with this guy is like I'd love to say like get everybody in a room. It'd be awesome. He won't get in the room. He's the guy who won't get in the room with any of these people, and he's snobby, and like you need an agreement on the underlying fact pattern, like where it's like fighter pilots are saying this in the dozens.
Yeah, electrical engineering is the key. I've said it repeatedly.
With no incentive.
That was one of the first things I learned.
All sorts of stigma for like coming out with this stuff. You know, presidents have admitted that, you know, there are truths behind this and have even seen, you know, UFOs in various cases. And so I think, it's kind of to Bruce's point where like, it's like having a conversation about God. It's like you just never convince the person on either side when you have that debate. What frustrates me is like, I don't view myself as like a UFO believer. I just think there's an anomaly here that's super worthy of investigation. And you have to agree on that as a starting point for any conversation. And a lot of these people, I guess Neil deGrasse Tyson being like the main one, I think the others sort of fall into line, and they're just a little more closed-minded, but they're not as like maybe what Red is sort of implying, which I'm somewhat partial to, is like maybe Neil deGrasse Tyson actually knows more than he lets on, and like is cynically like closing off the thing because he's so reflexively angry when the topic even comes up. But you have to agree on that initial like, this is worthy of exploration and investigation, and I think kind of get your ego out of the way. So I don't know in terms of the other horsemen or whatever, but
right. No, that was good.
Man, he sucks.
Yeah, no.
Do you think he's like that because he's been attacked so bad? Like before the alien thing, it's like the harder he gets attacked, the more he resists. You know,
dude, he pushes back too much. I think he's doing a bit, to be honest. I have another question for Jesse real quick, and I want to get to the hands. In the episode you did with Hal Puthoff and Eric Weinstein, there was a moment, and I don't know when this was in real time, but in the edit, Hal Puthoff had mentioned like, listen, like we did make breakthroughs in physics, in fundamental physics after World War II, and we tucked those away, and like you weren't supposed to look, and if we have systems in place, yada yada. Then there's this brilliant cut to you and Eric in another room discussing that, and Eric says something like, if there were fundamental breakthroughs, since World War II, like, that would be crazy. But when I'm watching it, I'm thinking like
Rolls Royce,
something's clicking.
I've got a lot of stuff on Rolls Royce.
Clicking. Like
I haven't posted
might be
it. No,
dark here. Like, did I see something there for real? Do you know if he's like?
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah, I think you did, and so like the context here is like Eric has his own sort of quote unquote theory of everything. And it's really like he's attempting unified field theory, which is the marriage of electromagnetism and gravity, which Einstein spent the whole latter half of his career trying to figure out mathematically. And the actually really interesting part of like that interaction is he says, Eric goes, there is fundamental physics being housed in deep black aerospace. And then Hal says, yes. And then Eric's shocked. And then Hal qualifies it and says at least topological physics. And my understanding of that exchange is actually things were figured out mid-century, and we talk a while about this because I think they're like specific experiments that might involve the marriage of those two forces. But like you don't actually end up with this sort of top of the pyramid theory of everything. You just end up with something that's locally useful. And then that can turn into like all sorts of novel comms applications, novel propulsion applications.
Like electrogravitics.
That's what I think. And we can talk about that for a while, but yeah.
Based.
Yeah, and we'll get to some hands. Let's keep it kind of brief and on topic and whatnot, but who's it? Mello, then Bruce, then Ashton?
Thanks. Yes, just a quick question. It's great to be amongst such experts and friends. Yeah, you guys are talking about Soul Foundation.
Mello is so diplomatic
in
all
your
the time.
interview, Panda. He mentions Army of Volunteers, which makes me think that perhaps they don't have enough funding, not surprisingly. So I kind of want, now that we have like Jesse and Deep and all kinds of knowledgeable folks here, I was wondering if you could help educate me about what are their funding sources and strategies, and generally speaking, how do we get the public sector to fund and finance this research, technology, as well as activism?
Yeah, I can maybe take that real quick. So, I can't speak to the actual direct structure.
I'm gonna make another drink here.
Full disclosure,
I've got these questions you guys asked me in the chat written down,
becoming
so I'm gonna get back to you guys on these.
Donor to the Soul Foundation. I definitely support their work, and an actual, tangible, practical funnel between capital, right, strategic, intelligent capital, and meaningful steps that can be taken to sort of accelerate and push the ball down the field when it comes to disclosure. And you just need to squeeze the nonprofits in a system that works. Yeah. Jesse, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that.
Or thoughts of
about the funding.
Yeah, even separate of knowledge, because you do come from like the VC world.
Yeah, I think we need the right. We need, and this goes back to, the conversation we were just touching on, where it's like electrogravitics. Like, if there is anything there, it was figured out by a guy named Townsend Brown in the 1920s. And yes, I think a lot of this stuff leads to like dangerous applications, but most of the applications are just civil side good stuff that like makes the world a better place. And that's just one example of like a framework that is UAP adjacent. It might not be like coming from the UAP stuff itself. It might synergize with like, you have these crashed material, or you have these observables in terms of the propulsion, and like it probably works with some sort of space-time metric engineering, and that's how you get to it or something. But like the point is, it's like if all of academia is like being led like sheep to slaughter into like these just dumb frameworks like string theory, which I know we bash all the time, but it really is just like not used. It's like this massive brain drain.
Sup, Stefan?
I think we have a huge problem. We have a huge problem as a world, like in a more kind of idealistic sense. And then even if you're like worried about like our national competitiveness, it's like that's a huge problem too. Like just in sort of a game theory sense or whatever. And my hope is this stuff sort of breaks open, this decade. And it's like what Grush says, where it's like the 0.5% that is weaponizable should of course be classified. Like I don't want like Klaus Fuchs style revelation of like some tech that could make a thermonuclear bomb look like a firecracker. Like that would, I'm not down with that. But to the extent this stuff can be used civil side, and the weaponization of it is more esoteric, like people just have to understand the broader frameworks, and I think that's a precursor to what.
Okay, we got questions for Jesse now.
You need that first, and then I think you need capital that's open to it.
It's true.
And
I have all.
Building it.
Dorian is 100% correct. Chat. Dorian.
Well said.
Well said. Bruce, you have any thoughts real quick about this Soul Foundation stuff?
I was going to put something else to Jesse, but on the Soul Foundation, I think that we're looking at a time where we're going to see a number of the independent organizations kind of stepping in, getting funding from, the finance and tech world, and doing the kind of science that institutional kind of academic foundations won't do, because of the paradigm issue and the fear around that. I don't go into a long thing about it, but just take one example of Dr. Milton Wainwright, who's a microbiologist in the UK, who became involved with panspermia many years ago. He basically went and worked with Vikram Singh, and I guess a lot of people here will know Vikram Singh is pretty much the man in panspermia. And when he found out about that work, he was like, well, there must be people like knocking down Vikram Singh's door to work in this exciting field of looking for alien life that's raining down from the upper atmosphere, and that maybe in our solar system. And of course, what he found out was that no, everyone was scared to do it. Nobody wanted to do it. that it was considered a career killer, and that you would almost certainly get no funding, and that there was this whole problem. You think that's just around something as fairly tame as panspermia, the idea that, that life could have begun out in the cosmos and come here. So what's your chances of getting funding
I used to drink
in
gin and
something
tonic.
more esoteric
We've moved
or
on.
controversial
We've
than that?
upgraded, JK.
The idea that maybe aliens are here.
No, vodka.
Whatever way do you want to go with that, or with the UFO field, where interdimensional, a mainstream
Sometimes
academic working in a university, his chances of getting anything for that is basically zero. And I've talked to some people that are doing the UFO kind of networking within the academic field, certainly in the UK, and they say that even just talking about what's happening in the US, and that is enough for most of their colleagues to say, well, you got.
Okay, couple quick answers. I'm gonna answer some questions from the chat. I think that the orbs must have something inside them because we see these gravity engines in front of them. I don't think that those orbs can be all plasma. To answer some of the questions from earlier, why has this not been disclosed? Because I think the answer is it breaks too many people's minds. I think that's the reality, is that a lot of stuff breaks people's minds. There's huge socioeconomic impact. Why is MH370 not disclosed? The answer there is that it's too much on the line, too much money on the line, too many people's careers on the line, etc. Oh, who would I James O'Keefe as well? I would James O'Keefe somebody like Lockheed Martin or one of the media people in general. That's probably who I would James O'Keefe.
Heather or following the craft, and they think there's a number of types that are part of this UFO story. Now, when you said earlier about getting scientists at least say that there's something there, that what do you think in terms of how
I'll talk about Antarctica
maybe we as a community should be better
leveraging
this fact that there's kind of an admitted anomalous plasma phenomena in our atmosphere that nobody's really taken a serious investigation of, and that has come up before in like the Project Condign documents, which was the UK's UFO research, which was a Freedom of Information request, revealed that the conclusions were basically that some of the UFOs were plasma phenomena, and that there was military applications likely from studying this phenomena. I mean, what do you make of that, Chesty?
Yeah, I'm tempted to say that I don't even really believe in dark matter. Like, it's sort of super stupid scientific heuristic where the universe would fling apart if you have, just normal cosmological gravity and you don't have dark matter.
Dude, I love Jesse.
Empty place.
I agree with him on everything.
Fact, what comprises 95% of the universe is a lot of this sort of plasma phenomena. And then I also think, if you think about plasma itself, it's sort of the fourth energy state, and it's maybe like a more fundamental state of reality that is more kind of probabilistic. Like if you look at like a plasma ball, it's like this fundamentally erratic random event generator or something.
Dark matter's not really a thing. It's just a property.
If you think of like a discrete 100%. Solid object, like
we would have found dark matter if we knew.
It's obviously much more predictable, and then,
that you
liquid,
touch.
Gas, plasma.
Just an explanation.
And so I do think if you just look at the observable phenomena, and Deep talks a lot about this, quantum macroscopic stuff within the context of UAP. And then if you think about all this shit Greer says, which I don't know if that's true, but
Did Deep talk about quantum macroscopic stuff?
Stuff, as far as like retrievals, like all of that somewhat comports that like we're just in this like more dense state, and so
Guys,
a lot
about
of the
throw down
universe is
actually facts right now. Get ready.
It's just plasma that's questions. Sort of undetected, and there's something about being able to
no, it's not a matter of creating dark matter.
High frequencies that actually gives
creating
you
gravity.
A different aperture into that
gravity.
world, and I think a lot of that stuff was figured out.
Hot fibrillation,
mid-century, along with kind of the atomic programs.
You do have a lot of.
Do you consider the possibility of plasma-based life as well?
Good question. Solar.
Yes.
I'm not sure why. I do pop my own podcast. I just haven't done it in a couple weeks.
You referenced the idea of the plasma ball being kind of like a probabilistic state, almost like the what we now refer to as, or what science refers to as, the electron cloud, as opposed to this like model of electrons
Lobster. I didn't use social media before this.
Nucleus.
This is all new to me.
They're in a cloud state, and they're not anywhere, but they're all over where they could be. Is that kind of the idea, that the plasma might represent a probabilistic state?
The reality is I kind of like it,
it hasn't been solidified yet.
In the right context, social media is okay.
Or what have you, or it represents something in every place.
Yeah, it's fundamentally erratic, and
I need to have like a woman with me, like a secondhand person, right? Like you got to have a guy and a girl. That's how you I think get the real numbers, people watching.
You know, is that
you got to be able to reach out to both sexes?
4-scale civilization or whatever. Is that actually just, you know, manipulable? Like, or, you know, that's not a word, but you know what I mean. I don't know,
right.
And you know, maybe Deep might be a better person for talking about this stuff.
Well, real quick, remind everyone to follow Skyfire News for all the latest updates. We'll get Deep's response on that and over to Ashton.
Yeah, sure. You know, I think Jesse killed it. It's not improbable. Maybe we're dealing with like a Wakanda here, where
you say
if we really did recover, right, some secret branches around the world recovered advanced technologies, let's say minimum conservatively thousands of years advanced.
It might be even Wakanda theory. You stole my theory.
4th generation like life forms. And if that's the case, whatever it may be, then there might have been significant breakthroughs just by sheer luck and observation of like some localized principles, like Jesse was saying. So they may be able to do things that would imply that there is some understanding of a unified field theory, but in fact it's really observation and replication. And then maybe, right, there's some sort of wall that you hit where there's only a certain amount of information you can gain and reverse engineering this stuff. But yeah, those are just like theoretical, right, speculative comments. Who knows what the truth is? But when it comes to like you know, plasma and so on, it's a really interesting point. It certainly is one of the phases of matter, and there are other phases of matter, however, right, that are also intriguing. So, for example, you have the entire class of quantum phases of matter, which includes topological insulators and topological conductors. And you know, Hal mentioned that that's one of the sort of insights in the private aerospace industry that exist, right, regarding this topic.
Okay.
And you know, topological materials are really, really interesting because it comes down to that very essence of being able to control electrons to create these really beautiful immersion patterns that allow you to, you know, replicate phases of matter and really interesting states, really interesting materials that aren't actually, you know, tied to their specific chemical composition per se, or any one crystal structure.
Okay, I think she's good.
So yeah, really interesting stuff.
Chat, she's been sleeping on my lap.
Hell yeah. Ashton?
Heyo, heyo. I hope you guys are ready. I took some notes here. First of all, Deep totally just stole my Wakanda theory. I'm just kidding. But I love that people use the Wakanda theory because I think that it really does describe like a breakaway civilization level technology that might be out there. One quick other thought, and then I have some questions. Unified field theory, I personally think that it's probably already been discovered multiple times. If we have had crafts since the 1920s and the Nazi stuff in general, in terms of unification of quantum and macro, I think it probably had to have been discovered, potentially is classified under SAPs, those special access programs. To me, that would explain why nobody has it out there. And then a few quick questions for Jesse, or I guess whoever else as well. But I'm curious, Jesse, what you think about Hal Puthoff in general. You know, I think there's a lot of disinformation around. I'm curious if you find him credible. And then kind of follow-up questions related to that is, you know, what does disclosure mean to you? And I guess that's an open question to other people as well. And what do you think we would have to do to achieve disclosure, given however you want to kind of define it? What do you think the main roadblock would be? And then the last part is, you know, I think we both agree that there's potentially the ability to make weapons of essentially mass destruction with the type of technology that would allow for objects to float or to move faster than the speed of light. But how do we disclose all of this without disclosing that? Like I think that might be the roadblock, right? I don't see a way to do that. So I'm curious as to what, Jesse, your thoughts and everybody else's are as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess the first one, put off. Yeah, I love Hal, and he's usually very, very open with me, and even when I think I'm hitting on like possible third rails.
She was just chomping
like,
down. You guys heard that, right?
He's pretty helpful in exploring various kind of very, very heterodox avenues of science. So I'm a big fan of his. I'm curious to hear what you've heard there. And then what was number 2 and number 3? I guess I guess weapons of mass.
Yep.
Yeah, weapons of mass destruction was 3. What was 2?
Yeah, well, so first of all, I'll say that I personally think that Hal Puthoff is legit. I didn't want to spoil your opinion by letting you know what I thought ahead of time, but I was just curious. But then I guess it's a matter of what do you think disclosure is to you, and then what would achieving disclosure look like to you? What do you think the main roadblocks would be for getting disclosure? And I guess is the idea of weapons of mass destruction coming from them one of those roadblocks?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, this is all based on a bunch of hypotheticals, but I think we have the same underlying assumption that like the U.S. is in possession of these sort of craft, which that's my base case. I think, man, I mean, and actually Red and I spoke about this on the show. It's like we live in such a visual society, and at this point, a large majority of the population actually believes in UFOs themselves. So it's like, in some sense,
Maze Love is here.
Like the intended effect of a lot of maybe even some of the false narrative stuff is like it's like taken play, and like people actually believe. But I think for it to be like a big sort of wake up call of like definitively we are not alone. 80% plus people understand that. Academia accepts it.
How many followers
I think for that to happen, we'd need to like see a craft full scale flying, or like high res imagery of like a an alien being. I mean, I know this stuff you're doing with like MH370, and the reason I've talked to you about this offline is like I won't touch it is because of what we started the conversation off with, which is like you seem like a nice guy. I don't fucking know. I'm just not a VFX person, and I just have no idea. And I think you end up in this liminal space with a lot of the video stuff, and it's the reason I don't even talk about some of the videos. Like I barely touch on like the Nimitz and
I didn't want to get into the MH370
like,
stuff, but
I actually don't think I could like debate. I'm like with the Nimitz stuff. I'm pretty sure I could debate Mick West on it pretty well, given all the the other sensors and like the visual evidence, like the firsthand eyewitnesses. Like there's just so much there. But like the other stuff, it's like I don't know. That's really tough. Like you're getting into kind of more esoteric territory. So I think you're going to need like like the bar for disclosure is like way higher than I think people realize. And then on the weapons of mass destruction front, yeah, I mean I have no idea, from like broader framework that's like could be super productive on like the civil front to like 100x the Tsar bomb or whatever. I have no idea like what work is required there, and I pray to God that just opening up the initial frameworks doesn't inevitably lead to the latter. Knowing human nature and like where it is now, I might be concerned about, reasonably concerned about that. And yeah, that's why I hope the world is also just waking up. I mean, we live in an apocalyptic time with thermonuclear weapons, and could destroy the world many times over with just the Earth's arsenal. And so I don't know to answer the part.
I think we're almost facing multiple apocalypses, like academia, the idea of what AI is about to do for, what we used to think was possible versus what is about to be possible. I have a quick question for you, Jesse, regarding how
can I follow up real quick on that? Then
please. Sorry, Ashton, go ahead.
So, because one last thing I'll say is that my opinion is that it's kind of a Pandora's box where like you just kind of get it all or you get nothing, right? Is, once you've unified quantum and macro, it's like, oh, well, I'll take the medical healing and the force fields and maybe teleportation and all this other stuff, but like, oh, I don't want the doomsday weapons. Well, it's not really that simple, right? And I think that might be one of the things holding it back. And then last little thought as well, and then I'll let you just jump into it, is that I personally think that in order to get past that, it may be a matter of not proving the technology is even real, but it's almost goes to the esoteric aspect, like Dr. Stephen Greer mentioned, which is like raising our collective conscious to a point where we feel comfortable that we're not going to destroy ourselves. Just some thoughts. Go ahead, Tuba.
Oh, well said. And I was actually wanted to go off a point you made earlier, right, which was this idea of Hal Puthoff as a topic. And I kept coming across Hal Puthoff in a lot of different research fields, and I would look into, and his name would come up. And one of the more recent ones, which is kind of odd, we're here talking about plasma and possibly plasma
Joey.
cosmology.
I'll write it down.
I had a couple interesting lunches with a man named David Talbot, who started something called the Thunderbolts Project. And it's a very interesting idea about, the idea of Birkeland currents and these filaments of plasma and electromagnetics kind of governing the formation of everything, and how, Jesse, like you said, dark matter is kind of a farce, and it's there to make up for the missing forces of gravity, which if you include electromagnetics into that, you're kind of like, you solve a lot of stuff. Well, after that, he introduced me to something called the Sapphire Project, and they were trying to create something called like a star in a jar, which was again confirmed by a man named Eric Dollard, electrical engineer, very interesting guy. But yeah, this idea of a star in a jar, and I came across the Sapphire Project, and on the board, I saw a photo. On the board of the Sapphire Project was Hal Puthoff. Like, how full circle is that, right? And I'm curious, have you ever talked to Hal about this idea, what this plasma is, and has that fed into your idea of what this kind of thing could be of electromagnetics and whatnot?
That's fascinating. No, I've heard Eric Dollard's name come up before, and a star in a jar is basically, creating fusion.
We were going to look at star in the jar later.
Would obviously be massively transformational.
We were actually going to look at star in the jar again later.
Knows a
That's
lot
on my
of
list,
shit.
guys.
I mean, I think he's still like super highly, he's very, very, very highly cleared.
I just added it again to my list.
You can see him,
look into it again.
Kind of formulating his words accordingly. And so, yeah, I agree with, I guess, the assessment. I think he has his hands in a lot of different pots, and I don't know where he sits on the proverbial pyramid, but I do think now at this point in his life he feels pretty broadly pro disclosure, and obviously he's working on this kind of quantum sensing company, but yeah, he's an interesting. If I could download the contents of his brain, that would be awesome.
I'm looking for dramatic people.
On Skyfire, we covered a story this week about the moon shrinking. Does anyone have more details on that? Because we just did a flash report. No one?
Yeah. So it is shrinking, and they did the study through the geology of the moon, right? So they're looking at it, and they had to actually, because it's causing landslides, moonquakes, and it's also like they had to readjust or calibrate their landing site for their next moon mission. And I think it's unmanned. I think it's going to be a robotic mission. I forget what it's called, but they've had to replan it. There's something going on now. Obviously, is it shrinking like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? No, I don't think so. Something's going on with the geology of the moon, and it's having an effect.
And another big story that kind of happened this week that we could listen to this clip for. It's kind of a good little topic changer, but still within obviously the realm of UFOs. Let's see, where's this at? We had Trump thinking. Well, first we had Robert Bigelow, who was a DeSantis backer, right? He was a big Ron DeSantis guy. For the room, Robert Bigelow is the person who's probably the single individual who spent the most of their own money researching this stuff. He was very active in the 90s, kind of when he got activated, and he's made all these different organizations, NIDS,
Shrinking Ripple Moon,
which got some of that government money, and like OSAP is somehow intertwined. But he was backing DeSantis, and now he's backing Trump, and he's helping him with his legal fees. And Trump thanked him at a rally this week. Let's see.
Very special guy. One of the best developers you'll ever see. He's big, he's rich, but he's a high-quality man. Builds some of the most beautiful things you'll ever look at. Robert Bigelow. Robert, please. Good-looking stuff. Thank you.
He's rich.
He's rich. I'm curious what Jesse and Deep think about that, and also in terms of I feel like a lot of the disclosure people, like Mellon, right, and whatnot, they're kind of like Democrats and Biden. I'm not trying to make this like a politically divided thing, but to me it seems like Bigelow's kind of been separate of that group, and I feel like this would be another.
His name's
curious what you guys make of Bigelow.
He's not disinfo. He's just
Trump's role in disclosure and whatnot.
I know Tupa pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Trump has look, I've
none of us in Skyfire are important enough to be disinfo.
You know, his personality, but like they're trying to like take him out, kind of death by a thousand cuts style, and maybe we'll, you know, I think resort to more drastic measures if his popularity and fame continues. I think the establishment will do anything to see him not elected, and then on the flip side, I think they've almost created a monster where
it's getting political in here.
He's felt so kind of
it's getting political in here.
You know, categorized.
I know who Jesse's voting for.
Categorized or miscategorized as like this fascist dictator type. That I actually think if he does win this time around, he will turn into a like he's gonna try to like reorganize the CIA and like, you know, maybe try to take it out or something. And like, you know, maybe his when he brings up John Trump, it's like his uncle, you know, from MIT that you've talked about, done a great episode on, the Red, is like, you know, maybe it's like a dog whistle or something. It's like a little threat. And
we need a little spice in this
UFO
chat.
Disclosure could.
We got to get at this stream or this space
with the Trump administration, and if you get like the typical, you know, if you get the DNC, I think you'll just end up with this like psyop-y soft disclosure thing that like has already been tried at best.
Yeah,
it goes kind of hand in hand here, because you know, obviously, you know, who's the enemy of Trump? The deep state. Who's the enemy of disclosure? The deep state. Like all this stuff kind of goes hand in hand. And
more Trump
look, if you're gonna bet on who's gonna be the next president, sorry, choking. Right as I'm talking, I'm choking on something. But if you're gonna bet on who's gonna be the next president, according to the polls, it looks like Trump's got it. So, you know, I think Bigelow made the right move to back Trump, thinking that he's going to try to clean up the swamp the next time he gets in there. And this might be the path to disclosure through Trump.
Do you guys think that really, though? Because, I mean, he had 4 years and he didn't do it. And I think there was even, he said some weird stuff, like when he did that interview with his son, where he said
Roswell?
He said, oh yeah, like look into it, or there was some interesting stuff there, right? Like he had a lot of opportunities. So I'm just curious, what do you guys think?
He tried to get the JFK files out, and Pompeo stopped him. And I don't know, you know, I don't have an insight into his psychology, but I think at this point he's just like, fuck it. And he's pretty close with Tucker, and Tucker's like all in on, you know, I don't know what the gradient is between soft disclosure and catastrophic disclosure, but I think he's more on the like full let's disclose as much as we can side. And
I'm voting for whoever gets this stuff out, chat.
I think if that's the issue you care about, I think Trump's like
the rest of the stuff doesn't matter to me.
Bet, and then obviously he has other issues. I mean, I'm net pro Trump for other reasons, but you know, like more prosaic reasons, but again,
prosaic reasons,
kind of tertiarily in the episode, Jesse, right? You mentioned that John Trump, Donald Trump's uncle, was the one who got the files from Tesla, right after Tesla died. That's a very interesting connection.
I got that from Red, so I can't take any credit for it. So yeah, no, 100%. It's a fascinating.
I'm a simple man. I see.
And Ashton, to speak to your point, I think Trump's first 4 years.
I see Amanda posts, and I like
our own government has been trying to, like, you know, Russian collusion. Like they've been hitting him with everything the entire time he was in office, right? And there were a lot of people that betrayed him or whatever that weren't really that loyal. So I think the next time he gets in there, like what Jesse said and what many people are saying, and what Trump himself is saying, is he's going to clean house.
And his last 4 years, he's not come back, so he's got nothing to lose.
Didn't he help with the MH370? Didn't he accidentally, like, there was a satellite system or something he accidentally showed off?
Oh, the one satellite picture? He did show that satellite picture, honestly. I mean, I'll just be real with you, because I'm going to vote for whoever I think is going to give us disclosure as the best chance. I'm a one-issue voter at this point. But I'm just curious to hear you guys' opinions on it all. I think it's all very enlightening.
I vote for whoever is going to help the economy and keep us out of war. That's the only two things I care about.
Deep, what were your thoughts earlier? You started, sorry.
Oh yeah, thanks, Fred. I was just gonna say that I guess I'm the contrarian in the room. I think that disclosure, the idea of a precedent led disclosure is a misnomer. It's the same idea of a precedent leading the next breakthroughs in transformer architectures and AI, right? Like it requires so much knowledge inside trust, insider trust, AI, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I think it has to be some. We have to go back to the 50s, right? Like we have to pull off essentially what General Bernard Screever did, who's kind of technically the father of the Space Force.
More Trump
right?
supporters in here than I would have thought.
We have to create a really powerful, I think, collaboration between the
I like
MIT,
being in the middle and not giving
right?
a crap.
Like the industrial,
I can wash my hands
private
of
industry, academia, and the government. And I think that's the only way. So a president can only play
Trump, though, over
a cog
RFK
in the
right
machine in a role like that.
But I think Deep, like, to just push back a little bit.
Yeah, no, go for it.
I agree that the actual like frontier science progress is not going to come from the president, but like an admission of an entire counter narrative of the last 70 years, possession of exotic material, white collar crime that's happened, like all of that coming from the symbolic leader of the free world is a massively powerful thing. And it opens up the floodgates for conventionally high IQ and smart scientists to be open to this stuff in the first place. So I do think
we need some Biden supporters up here.
It's not zero
totally
sum.
Still a
positive sum.
Good point. Yeah, no, I completely agree. It would be massive. It would literally convert millions of engineers and scientists overnight who could actually move the ball forward. I imagine.
Yeah,
and that's kind of it. I'll go for it, Ash.
So one last thing I want to say is that there's a lot of influential people up here on the speaker panel. I'm not going to call you guys out by name, but you know who you are. And I would say that we definitely need to be pressing, in the interviews that we have, even bringing these topics up to force the candidates to address these issues, right? Because I think that these are things that are really important, and try to figure out who are the ones who are going to give us that disclosure that's out there. And the more we talk about it as people who are doing podcasts, et cetera, the more pressure it puts on them. That's all. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well go ahead, Ren. We should get to the hands after that.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of it for the news. I had a question for Deep. It's kind of a sidebar. It's it kind of ties in the mummies, but maybe I don't know if you want to recount. You've talked about your experience publicly. Do you feel like what you saw was similar to the mummies?
Trajan's ghost.
That's hilarious, but
he's thirsty.
No, it's a good question.
Trajan's ghost is thirsty for attention.
I would say there was practically no overlap outside of the fact that some form of hieroglyphic language was involved.
Commander Korn, good comment. Welcome to the chat as well.
No worries.
They need a crisis.
I'm unfamiliar. Could you share
technology.
More? Yeah, I would, but probably, and I can always go deeper later, an offline call, Keemstar, like when there's more time. I don't want to take up the oxygen in the room with this experience, but I think Red Panda is like referring to a really sort of strange, anomalous experience I had way back February 1st, 2019. And yeah, I think, it was one of what one would call a canon event, if you guys are familiar with that, right? Something that really changes the trajectory of your life. Yeah, don't want to get into it too much at the moment.
Guys, let's keep it.
Because again, I hate being one of those like like experiencers who go on and on about their stories. But
it is interesting though, and there is a similarity to Keem's experience because I went back and watched.
Guys, we might be picking up a dog.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, there's
I'll dump mine. I tell my story relatively fast first.
I'm petting a dog down here.
Feel more comfortable, but
sure.
I was a child. I was on my way to school. I was about 10 years old. I was looking out the window of the school bus. There was a field, and then there was a patch of trees, and then another field. And right before, when I was in the first field, right before I got to the trees, I could feel myself kind of focusing or meditating or whatever you want to call it. By the time I got to the trees, something was speaking to me saying, you're going to see, a UFO, you're going to see this thing in the sky, and don't freak out and don't tell anyone, right? And it's going to be, you're lucky that you get to see this, right? By the time I get to the open field and it's, a clear sunny day, not even a cloud in the sky, it's a silver dot right in the sky. I'm looking directly at it. The sun's reflecting off of it. Didn't move or anything. and it was like a really calming, like, I'm lucky and blessed that I get this experience. And I didn't tell anybody on the bus. And it wasn't until I'm like 5 minutes from school that I start freaking out. But at that point, I can't tell other kids, look out the window. They're like, that was like 15 minutes ago, you know? So yeah, that's my experience.
That is
we're gonna try to lift her up.
amazing. Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. And I see your point, Red. There's definitely some overlap there. Damn, no doubt. Yeah, you know, in my case, I was a bit older than you, Keemstar. I was 2019. I was 23 years old, and you know, it was in my room in Toronto. So if you want to imagine the setting, this is on the 30th floor of a condo, right by the harbor. So, and on top of that, you know, the crazy part is this happened in the daytime.
She gets up, I'll pick her
up. My blinds are open. There's sunlight streaming down the room, into the room, and so on and so forth. And I had spent the, you know, first part of my morning just like reading papers and sending emails. And I remember putting my laptop down, and I had the exact same feeling
Everyone's having their UFO
that
stories.
you had, which is what I think part of what what inspired his comment. Because I had a distinct sort of what I now call a download, right? But I had this distinct knowing of what's about to happen, but it wasn't in words. It was in
yes. It's hard to explain, right? Like there's no words. It's just mental like data.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. And I bet first people who have like a neural link to neural link communication will probably experience something similar to that.
Yeah.
Where you're like, right, experiencing thought or thought transfer.
It didn't work.
So you know, I felt this experience.
Guys, I kind of want to play some Pal World.
Before I could even properly process it and react to it, I was completely paralyzed. And you know, in my case, within short order, I ended up seeing about 3 different humanoids materialize. Right, there was one, and then 2 more that came right next to it. And these sort of humanoid objects, things, whatever, life forms, apparitions, whatever you want to call them, they were kind of like the classic phenotype of grays. However, the crazy part is that in, you know, this case, 2 things.
Guys,
one,
they
were wearing these white suits that literally looks like
she's super
Steve
nice to me
Jobs
every single time I join a space.
That's like the best way to put it. They had these like beautiful golden symbols in the center that kept changing.
We're gonna simp.
And one of the odd things about this whole experience, right, is that they somehow communicated with this like notion of like VR or AR combined with like telepathy plus hieroglyphs is the best way I can say it. So like imagine seeing these massive subtitles floating above these things' heads, and they're in like these sort of blood red, dark red hieroglyphs combined with like Japanese. Like it was this weird, strange writing. It totally changed my life though, in many, many ways. But yeah, you know, the whole experience, it doesn't make sense. The crazy part, right, is that when people draw these things, it doesn't do the actual experience, these weird anomalous experiences that
people
level
have, 30
right,
in Pal World,
and
I'm
have
like level
had
22 or
history,
something. No, wait,
doesn't
no, I'm
do
26
justice.
now.
What I saw, I don't see anything close to it.
You don't see Sandy?
Whether it's Communion or some other book, right? There's no art that truly captures
right here.
the essence. So yeah, just a random comment.
Yeah, you know what else you guys have in common? Not to derail it too much. You guys have that weird like pre-experience thing, and you guys both also had a certain group try and say you guys faked your experience, which is pretty interesting. Correlations. Well,
the people that came in and said that, I'm like, bro, I've been a YouTuber for 15 years. Like I've said that on podcasts, like, you know, exclusive deals on Spotify. Like I've shared my story a lot throughout the years. I'm not making it up.
Dude, yeah, and in my case, it's like, bro, I literally put my entire fucking future and current scientific reputation on the line, like, morally, spiritually, you know, like, there's 0 incentive. In fact, there's negative incentive. But yeah, it's just, I've actually learned to ignore, like, the trolls. In fact, I'm grateful for UFO Twitter for, like, thickening my skin. It's actually kind of hilarious, because when you go to other communities, the amount of like trolling is far less. So you're like Bro, this is chill.
Bro, when I came over here, I was in shock. I was like, what is going on? Like, there's swatting and doxing and like there's disinformation and like even the grown-ups. Like most of these people are grown-ups and they're acting like kids on Call of Duty. What is happening? I'm like, I love this. Like that made me like it even more because obviously, you know, I'm pretty toxic myself, but you know.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it is like a Call of Duty lobby. And yeah, we're all playing some crazy games.
How do you not like this guy? He's fucking hilarious.
Who's the group who tried to tell you guys that you faked your experience?
We refer to them as the UFO hate group. They're like they all have one thing in common. They like worship Lou Elizondo. They're like big Lou fans. Like one of these guys, which is like one of the leaders, I'm not even joking, like makes AR art with like Lou with like paintings. Like it looks like it was painted by Michelangelo and it's Lou naked and he's like, I love you, daddy. Like it's some weird stuff, bro.
Oh my God. Thank you for the visual.
It is bizarre. Okay, let's get over to Hands. Dude, I can't thank you guys enough for being here, too. We got B, then Arthur, then we're going to get up to Maze. Thanks for being here, Maze. Maze hosts some pretty cool spaces, so if you don't follow her, you guys should. Go ahead, B.
Good evening, guys. Thank you so much for the space. It's amazing refinding the power of these spaces that we can have for the community as a whole. And I want to thank every single one of you for what you're putting into this. It's legendary. I do want to kind of bring it back a little bit to the beginning of the conversation when we were speaking about the news this week between the interview with Project Unity with Burchett. And I think it would be folly on us as the community to try to narrow down who he's speaking to just one person anyway, because I have to bring it back to Pasulka. And a quote from her is, "What kind of world is it that I live in when it's orchestrated by people that I never even knew existed?
It's a hard no.
And if I talk about them, I will be labeled a conspiracy theorist." End quote.
She doesn't want to be
She
picked up
also
on
recently stated on Somewhere Skies when she came out in the talk that if you have a platform, if you are a content creator, or if you start making a voice in any way, you will be approached by disinformation agents. And also the epistemological shock that she had from the phenomena wasn't realizing that the phenomena was real itself, but realizing the depth and gravity of this perception management aspect of the phenomena. Stating that there have been agreements made between church and state, and that this goes back forever, right, on this perception management of the phenomena. So I wanted to bring some highlights to that we should never think that it's only going to be one person. And I would like to ask Jesse, you, if you've had any experience with what she could be talking about, because I find you as an amazing content creator.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have had one experience actually with her that I can't talk about with just purely out of respect for her. But
it's getting spicy.
Yeah. I don't know how much more I can say, but yeah, they're fucking weird people in this world that there's the group
I love the
that,
emotes, guys.
You guys are referring to Red and Keem and stuff, but I think there's other stuff too, and I feel bad for her because she's an amazing person, and I think she hit some third rails and experienced some bizarre blowback and people inserting themselves into her life and stuff. And she talked about it on Rogan, and I have one kind of corroborating experience that again, I'll say fucking anything, but just out of respect for her, I wouldn't want to volunteer it.
So you haven't been approached by anybody ever and asked Jesse?
What's that?
I think the world wants to know. Have anyone from the government tried to talk to you and convince you, or said that they'll pay you some money if you come out with a certain opinion?
There are people who've approached me and I've gotten lunch with or have emailed me, and I think I have a decent BS detector where I'm like, you're just trying to sell me on some like fake idea or whatever.
And at this point, I feel like I have enough good people around me, even people who were formerly on the inside, like Grush, where like I can kind of triangulate the truth before like, and like my stuff is so like, you know, like I try to make it like as deep as possible and like just strike once but strike really hard in terms of like putting out the stuff and not doing like these like high cadence output thing. I mean, a lot of the issue is like the microeconomics of like UFO journalism, where like it's like I need a story or whatever, and like I'm really lucky in that like I kind of transitioned from like another day job where like I don't really have to like engage in that rat race, and so I do my best. I'm sure I've fucking spouted some bullshit without knowing it, but like I really do my best to like go really deep on. I just don't take. I treat everything with like a priori skepticism, and I really don't try to not take anything at face value, because you can't. It's like I think there's a line in Invisible College by Jacques Vallée where he's like, trust absolutely no one, and he tells I think Diana Pasulka that too, and I think it makes its way into American Cosmic, and I think that has to be your kind of mental model here.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Hey, I just wanted to end that by saying thank you, and I would love to see you and Keem and all of you guys on the UFO intro one day. By the way, just saying, thank you.
Right on.
Sweet, I'm down.
Great, yeah, for sure. And good questions. I'm curious, you know, it raises more questions of when will this end? You know, when will this become less of a minefield?
We have like 300 people in this
straight research
space right now.
I think that's one of the things that one of the reasons why we absolutely need disclosure. It's not just that we don't have the right answers, is that there's this.
We probably only have so many viewers because the debunkers aren't in here. This is not a debunker stream right now.
Well, let's get over to Arthur, and then we'll get up to Maze. Go ahead, Arthur.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to bring this back to the whole Bigelow and Trump topic. I thought it was interesting. Trump put out this 10-point plan to dismantle the deep state. There's a couple of interesting parts on it. One was establishment of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to expose corruption of the deep state. Another one was make every inspector general independent of the office that they oversee. So I think those 2 points could have direct implications for the UFO cover-up, and this whole non-adversarial approach that we've been seeing from like TTSA and that whole group, where they're kind of trying to work within the system. I don't know if that's going to work. I have very low hopes of this soft disclosure. Let's be nice to these people that have been lying and manipulating and breaking the law for 70 years. I think we really have to
catastrophic disclosure,
fight back and fight hard. So that's just my point that I wanted to make.
Catastrophic disclosure.
Yep.
I'm not going to fight back, and I'm not going to just trying to make a joke, but it bombed. I'm with you, Arthur.
All right, let's get over to Maze. We'll get up to Keem. We got Mello and Bruce back in here too, so I'm glad you guys are here. Go ahead, Maze.
Hi guys. Love the topic. I love anything UFO, and I see all my buddies in here, so just shout out to you guys. Trump has all kinds of mystery just wrapped up in him, right? We have somebody already hit on his great uncle.
We got some amazing
who was working with Tesla.
Chat.
So
this space
one of the
is
things
good.
that was really interesting about that is if
we got like
Tesla
8 toasts
did
up here in the speaker.
Let's just say some potential, I don't know, time travel technology that would have enabled like the whole writing. Do you guys know about the 1890 trilogy? There was like 3 books that were written about him.
What's the 1819 trilogy? Chat?
Like literally named Baron Trump. Well, his son's name is Baron, but the books were about Trump. Oh, so you've heard of those? Okay. So then on top of that, you have you guys brought up the Bigelow thing, and then you have the Q drops, which is really weird. It's like some sort of mystery there. And then Simpsons, they actually made a prediction about the 2024 elections. Do you guys know that? So they basically say that he's going to win that, and then his daughter is going to be running in 2028. So I thought
Trump's
those are some fun facts to let you guys know about. And then also another political thing real quick, and then I have a question. When Hillary Clinton went against him. She ended up having like this huge research group that went out and did all these polls and tried to kind of find out what it would take for the Trump supporters to not come out and vote. And there was all kinds of things on this list, okay? And they were going to come out, a majority of them, and all
They're
of
called
them.
the Luanons,
Then
guys.
comes the question, a UFO alien invasion. And 38% said that they would not go out to vote, but the rest of them did. I thought that was funny. And then that also, I don't know, we've been kind of talking about what that might look like with Project Bluebeam. So I guess my question is, all these disclosures, I've been on this roller coaster. I'm curious to know what you guys, do you have an expectation for what it looks like? It just feels like,
she asked the same question I asked.
What has come has just kind of fallen so short, but what would make it real to you? Like, what would you believe, and how would it be a real disclosure?
Maze asked the same question I asked, chat. We're meant to be together.
Great question. No, absolutely. I think what disclosure looks like is always going to be, you know what I mean, in our imagination. And now, and then we get little steps, and incrementally we get closer to
me,
it.
it looks like an airplane.
But at the same time, we're getting further from, you know, these main concepts. I did not expect to have the conversation of angels.
Guys,
and
what does disclosure look like to Ashton Forbes?
With, you know, UFOs, aliens, and stuff. But it's, these worlds are mixing sometimes. And
you
so,
know what's coming,
I think, you know, Terrence McKenna said it best when he was talking about the eschaton, or the end of all things, when he said, like,
that's disclosure.
Back in the day, it was easy to imagine what the next 50, 100 years would be. The changes were so incremental, were so spread apart. But now,
that's disclosure.
You know, even this was like in the 90s, I think he said this. Changes are happening so fast, we can't imagine what it's going to be in 50, let alone 100. I mean, there's no way. Like, you know, especially with what we're seeing with AI now too. So that's a great question. What does disclosure look like? I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on that. We got Bruce, then Mello, and then Keem's next. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Keem.
I have something else that I want to bring up, but I don't think I think it's like impossible to answer that. You know, the only way I think we get real disclosure is from the aliens, not humans. I don't trust any humans. Like, what? Like, okay, let's imagine, right? The president of the United States, you know, leaders of all,
he's going to steal
the
my
CIA,
thing.
the FBI, everyone's there, right? The whole cabinet's there, and they say, okay, look, aliens are real. This is the species.
He's stealing my thing.
That. Instantly, people are going to be like, what are they hiding? What else is going on? What are they doing? Like, no one's going to believe it. Like,
exactly.
Keem is stealing my thing, for the record. That's my analogy. Just kidding. I just want to simp real quick for you, Maze, just because I appreciate you. Every time I go to your spaces, you always call me out. So I just want everybody's in the stream should follow Maze. She does a lot of hosting. She's an awesome person. So thank you.
Can I bring up this thing real quick? We had, you know, David Grush came out. He said, like, you know, the U.S. government has, you know, UFOs. You know, he alluded to the fact that we have, you know, aliens and all that in our possession, and it made major news. But John Lear, like, said this.
We got like an all-star lineup
years
of you
ago.
So. Oh, we admit the simp, James.
Can you guys go back and watch the John Lear interview and then watch
simp for Maze Love all day.
And everything he's saying, and it's like these things link up, but they're like 37 years apart.
Yep, I told Bruce that. You remember, Bruce? I brought that up, that they were so similar. Yep.
Now, Maze was been like super nice to us. Like, I would join spaces.
All right, we'll probably get through the rest of the hands, and I think what we'll do is we'll have Tupa do a space after.
Even before,
because, you know, we used to do a lot of spaces. We've been so busy lately. And we can't bring everyone up, you know what I mean? We're trying to keep these a little more streamlined.
Still, like,
shouting me out. That sounds dope. Jesse, did you have a response to that?
I did. I don't want to defend my buddy too much, but it's like, I do think there's a stepwise difference between like bringing 40 people directly to the intelligence community inspector general who've like worked on the stuff.
300 people
and
in chat.
John Lear, who had the widest filter of all time, was just saying all sorts of, you know, there's like a soul square on the moon that, like, you know, harvested souls, and just talking about 36 different races. And yeah, I mean, I have a whole theory on Lear and his bizarre ulterior motives. That's all. That's all I wanted to interject.
Can we get a quick summary of that theory? Because like this is something I've been looking at recently, and I'm not an expert by any means, but I would like to know your theory on that.
Yeah, and I've talked to Red about this, but it's like, so at the same time as like the Lazar stuff was coming out, Paul Benowitz had seen, it was around the same time, it was like mid to late 80s. Paul Benowitz saw like bizarre craft activity going on at Kirtland Air Force Base, and Linda Moulton Howe was taken to Kirtland Air Force Base and was shown a lot of the same weird like origins of humanity. Humans are containers of souls, like bizarre kind of disinfo that I think Lazar was shown. It's this weird thing with the whole Lazar story is right. Like,
do we think
this
Lazar
amateur propulsion guy?
Do we think Lazar was shown disinfo?
He was super compartmentalized, but then he's also was shown all sorts of crazy shit about like the origin of humanity, and those two things are like completely contradictory, right? Like if you have this like really stovepiped program, but then you're also showing this guy
make
like
sure you vote.
The secrets of everything, like the
vote
top
matters.
Of the pyramid, so to speak.
Unlike
like,
your presidential
that doesn't really like make sense.
Vote
I
matters.
think there are a lot of like aviation breakthroughs
Blue
in the 80s, and I think a lot of people are asking a lot of questions about those aviation breakthroughs at specific bases. And so I think a guy like John Lear, who held all sorts of aviation records, whose father invented the Lear jet and was involved in I think some interesting breakthroughs, was kind of playing flood the zone defense and spreading some disinfo through people like Lazar and through Linda Moulton Howe, and I think Doty was involved in all of this stuff as well.
This vote matters, chat. Make sure you get your votes in.
Yeah, that's kind of the theory, and Red and I have talked about this as well. But like, if you think about it, like, just take if you just take like instead like the really like high like 3,000 level foot view, and like it's like, okay, look at the forest and not the trees. Like, just think about it like this. If you had like a super secret UFO program and you were like hiring a guy like Lazar, and it's like you have a guy, his best friend has like an active UFO newsletter at the time that
I'm going to text Jesse after this.
Do you not find that out in a background check? And then simultaneous to that, Lear leaked the Lazar story, put the files on George Knapp's desk, and Knapp even admits and has admitted in later interviews that Lear was flying cargo jets for the CIA into the late 80s. And so like you have these two things. It's like, if you have an amazing super secret program, like, are they not doing background checks on the people they're hiring? Like, fucking obviously they are. And then the second thing is like, you have a guy, the CIA is actively contracting with a guy that's spilling all your core secrets. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. So I think Lear to me is like clear disinfo agent, witting or unwitting. That's where I'd be open. Like, I don't know, he might have been like useful idiot. I'm not quite sure there, but like, that's my theory on Lear.
Very interesting. And real quick, your friend Eric Weinstein is in the room.
Eric Weinstein's
here. Come up. Maybe Jesse could help prod him. We'd love to hear your take on. This stream's getting. You've been pretty vocal lately, Eric, about kind of some of the science going into this UFO topic and kind of how
Eric Weinstein
we need
chat
adults in the room.
So we'd love to have you come up. Tweet. If not, no worries. Stay listening. But we'll get to some hands. I don't know who was next, Tupa.
I think Mello was next.
Mello.
Sorry.
Oh, it might have been Bruce first, actually. But
okay.
Thanks, buddy. Though appreciate that, Eston.
I'll always get Mello in there.
Bruce. If you want me to go? Yeah, I mean, on the disclosure topic, a 2-point kind of response. In terms of the military disclosing or the government disclosing something.
Damn, we got 350 people in here.
No matter what they know, we can't know what they know, right?
See if Weinstein comes
we don't have the access to then assess.
Damn, chat, that Friday night
even
space
if they were to
good.
reveal something, we couldn't assess if that's all they knew, right? So you can never get to a point where you're certain that the inside world has revealed itself to you. So whether they give you nothing, whether they give you a lot, you basically can't assess that and say that's a full disclosure. They've given us everything they've got. We can't know that. So we have a huge problem baked in to the way that system works. Okay. Also, I don't really believe that we can do a lot to pressure them. I know that people say, you know, you call your senators, you know, that's fine, do what you want, but I don't see you're going to be able to put significant pressure. And I think, as people touched on earlier, the JFK papers, we still haven't managed to get that. There was more popularity around getting those out and more support in the inside getting those out than on the UFO topic, and we still haven't got all of that. So I'm not very focused on government disclosure. I mean, it's great if it happens. It's great if you know, Grush and other whistleblowers to bring out stuff. Great, totally support that. But for me, and then speaking as, again, taking on a different hat, and as the kind of the director of, you know, the Alien Technicians Research Group, you know, the first funded UK non-profit doing research into alien technical signatures and SETI, that, you know, the focus that we have is on objective, scientifically supported evidence of an interaction with a non-human intelligence in the past that can be publicly looked at. The evidence can be publicly looked at by anyone. And it takes the stance, in fact, that Tom DeLonge gave, which is, he stated up front that everything had to be rediscovered in public, that we were not going, he also said, we're not really going to get all this stuff come out. It has to be rediscovered in public. And that's the vision I take. And that's what we're doing, is that we have honed in on a case where we can support it. Right. Sorry.
And we did have Eric, sorry to the hands, we did have Eric hop up here. Great points, Bruce. I want to remind everyone, follow Skyfire News for all your latest updates in UFO news. Eric, how's it going? How are you feeling about UFO disclosure these days? Heard you talk about interdimensional beings and the term, at least, Grush. How's it going?
It's going well. I'm in a car, so I can't get my mic on and off. I'm really here, since it's a Jesse room, as Jesse's hype man. Out of my capacity, since he's the guy who got, I blame Jesse for quite a lot, and my interest in UFOs chief among my complaints. The issue about the science and the history and how come we're only coming to this now in 36.
No.
Blah, blah, blah. I think people don't understand that even if the data existed,
don't you think the JFK disclosure is related?
Yeah,
probably Kimberly.
And it was,
I think JFK was related. Yeah.
Fake data.
Personally.
You can't expect scientists to sort through issues in which you have an active player trying to make the data fake, right? So effectively, the whole thing becomes an exercise in spotting fakery. And I don't think any of us are good enough, given the amount of nonsense around this topic, to feel that we have the right as scientists to say, oh yes, these 17 incidents are real, because there is no incontrovertible evidence, to my way of thinking. If for no other reason, then
hey chat, make sure you like the stream.
Manufactures high strangeness for some reason around this topic. And if you just think about how much we're talking about disinfo and psyops and controlled opposition and useful idiots, this was previously, 20 years ago, the language of a tiny number of people. Some conspiracy theorists who gained access to this lexicon, and people who did this for a living inside of the intelligence community and military contracting and defense. And so as a result of this, everything that the CIA does or that the military does in a clandestine way sounds spooky and weird. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to disaggregate the high strangeness of black projects, SAPs, SCIFs, things that are way bigoted, etc., from any residual strangeness of an actual phenomenon. And you can't ask scientists to do that. The other thing I was going to say just briefly is that if you imagine that aliens and non-human technology and advanced civilizations that we know nothing about are on the table, then you have to realize that there is no precedent for that. And so all of your intuition prompts would be broken if the thing that you were considering were to be true. So I've talked about this in terms of the doubly scientific method, where normally we study things that are either non-sentient or less intelligent than we are. We have absolutely no scientific protocol, so far as I'm aware, for studying things that are more intelligent than we are that may not wish to be known to us. And as a result, you need a doubly scientific method, which has never been set out. Something that looks both down the intelligence spectrum, like as if you're looking at a duck from a duck blind, and looks up the intelligence spectrum, as if something is looking at you from a duck blind, viewing you as the duck. And as a result, the public, in particular the UFO community, gets very pissy about scientists not accepting what everyone in the community knows to be true. And the reason is that it's very easy to get rid of scientists. You just flood your data with nonsense and bullshit and make it impossible to clean. And then everybody who's dependent upon doing good science for a paycheck is going to run in the opposite direction.
Thank you for that. Jesse, Keem, any thoughts on that?
It made perfect sense to me.
Yeah. Eric, what do you, I know we've talked about this a bit, but like,
do we have to call him doctor?
I think increasingly, like the deeper you get into the UFO stuff, you have this weird interweaving between possible physics breakthroughs and then like stuff that's dropped out of the sky, like kind of like whole pieces of exotic things, the use of which we don't know. And then, you know, possibly those two things, there's like a confluence of them where they like come together, or one is a cover for the other. I guess how do you sort of think of those two things kind of probabilistically?
You know, the problem, just it's like you and me talking as usual, except with 500 of our friends.
Don't call him Mr.
You know,
yeah.
I think that the way I would look at it is you have to blow out the variances in what you believe to such an extent that you're not really saying much at all. So in other words, I'll give a very good example. People told me fantastic tales about a secret army with black helicopters, no transponders, no insignia, men with speaking North American accented English, threatening them, destroying equipment, confiscating equipment. It sounded like the dumbest, you know, Jason Bourne movie you'd ever heard. But one, maybe more of a James Bond, where there was like a state within a state that doesn't exist. And I didn't know what to make of it because there was no way of fudging it. And then we find out that the CIA has something called the Office of Global Access, and that it's tasked with, you know, using JSOC to go after, I don't know, satellites, planes, ours, theirs, nukes, whatever that might be loose. And you think, oh, I get it. It's not even about UFOs. It's about recovery. And one of the things that it may recover might be UFOs if there are any UFOs to recover.
What should we ask
so suddenly you take something
Eric Weinstein
that was completely the stuff of science fiction, and you realize that it's on the org chart of the CIA that anybody can see, but nobody knows what the Office of Global Access is, because it's like saying, you know, the Office of Special Situations or the Office of Non-Standard Capabilities. It doesn't mean anything, and it's hiding in plain sight. I would say that the problem is, if you ask me to disaggregate this stuff, I was assigning previous probabilities based on the idea that either somebody I knew who's not crazy about anything else,
he's a mathematician,
invented a ghost story, maybe I was being pranked, who knows, or that, you know, there was a secret army inside of the country that went undetected by the FAA.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Nothing so interesting was going on. It was just the CIA doing CIA things. So as a result of that, until we get better guesses, the scientific community will look like monkeys because we're being gaslit. And I think that it's just important to recognize that constantly asking people, well, what do you think, is basically saying, oh, please, will you destroy your entire credibility this afternoon in order to...
See, they're worried. They're so much worried about what people think of them, right?
No information. And we've got to stop torching our scientists. I'll just say this to the community. If you want better people in the space, if you want scientists to take it seriously, stop threatening their ability to put their children through college by asking them these questions.
Well, that's a great segue into a topic that's been kind of hot in this community. And I want to remind everyone to follow Skyfire News for the latest updates. But
517 people.
Gary Nolan has kind of come out
huge.
semi-hard against Neil deGrasse Tyson and some of these other public scientific debunkers. And I do know you debated Mick West, Eric. And what are your thoughts on this kind of schism between this kind of like group of academia and scientists that are willing to look at this subject and those that are kind of flat out debunking it?
Well, I really do want to be the hype man, so I'm going to give that to Jesse first, and then I'll grunt and say some stuff afterwards.
I would so to walk my earlier criticism of Neil deGrasse Tyson back. I would
walking it back,
or rather to criticize him, but not to say that there's no place for skepticism. I would wholly separate somebody like a Mick West from a Neil deGrasse Tyson, and actually give a rare compliment to Mick West in that at least he speaks on the layer of first principles, considers these videos, like may come in with some, a priori biases and issues in terms of priors or whatever, but analyzes the videos, and then he shakes out that they're sort of debunked or whatever. And it's, and in the case of, Nimitz, it's just like it's like a small plane or whatever. And then in the case of the gimbal, it's like a, rotational effect of, whatever. Like, that's fine. Like, that's like, you're doing like real analysis. I think the issue that I have is with people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, which I won't belabor the point because we already spoke about this, but it's like, you won't even acknowledge that there's something worthy of investigation here. And to Eric's point, there are real reputational risks in admitting that.
What do you think about Gary's point of removing his PhD? Do you think people should get their PhDs removed who are kind of putting out bad info, or maybe, I don't know, preventing this topic from getting forward? Gary did say remove his PhD.
I mean, I think that's a little hyperbolic, but I'll let Eric speak to this.
I love Gary. That's an outrageous suggestion. I have a lot of problems with Neil, but I also love him when he's doing standard science. The problem is, this is sort of the Shermer, Sam Harris, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Mick West.
I'm gonna make another drink while we listen, chat. I got my headphones on. I can hear.
It's about the fact that people like to tell ghost stories and create interest value in their lives when nothing much is going on. I know that we all look for meaning, and that one way we look for meaning is making stuff up. I saw a really powerful UFO waiting for a Thai restaurant in Malibu, and we all saw it. And then I went across the road, and it was a Mylar balloon at night, glistening. We thought it was some sort of weird light thing going on offshore. And since everyone in line saw it, I definitely know that if no one had gone across the road, we could all have told that story. So you imagine that any honest UFO person has to recognize that a tremendous amount of this stuff is Mylar balloons, somebody seeing aerospace stuff being tested that they weren't supposed to see, etc. And the problem that you're having is that the energy comes from like the amazing Randy, where you're going to say, I know that a priori I don't need to worry about bunco artists. And there's a lot to suggest that this is all likely to be bunk. Now, that bunk may be CIA, it may be multi-billion-dollar bunk. I picked Operation Fortitude with and putting false radio chatter out so that the Germans were thinking that we were going to invade Norway rather than the beaches of Normandy. What's distasteful to me about this is it's perfectly fine to say, I bet this is all nonsense. But there's this kind of identity that goes around just claiming, oh, we don't need to worry about that. People are always seeing apparitions and Loch Ness monsters and Sasquatch. And by the way, that was somewhat of my energy, but even, and Jesse can keep me honest, Jesse, feel free to say whatever's true. Even when I was shutting Jesse down constantly saying, shut up about the UFO stuff, I don't want to hear it anymore, I wasn't saying I know this to be bunk. I was saying I assume that this is not true, but I didn't have this energy of like confidence and certainty and the smug condescension I've given the analogy, we were pretty sure up until the mid-1950s or late 1950s that electromagnetism worked through the electric and magnetic fields. And it doesn't. It works through something called the electromagnetic fore potential. It was like a giant error in the heart of a very well-established subject. The fact that Neil is not exhibiting what I would call epistemic humility in the face of something that's obviously weird as hell has to do with professional incentives and the political economy of institutional membership. And you'll notice that Neil's having a lot of trouble at the moment remembering that sex is determined by gamete size and motility. Because the institutional world is going crazy, it's dragging a lot of our favorite commentators along with it. And I think you have to look at it as an institutional effect, that if your bread is buttered by the Hayden Planetarium, you're probably under a lot of pressure. It would be great if he would resign his post and say, I don't want to come under that pressure, and then they'd be forced to rehire him. But just consider that you just had the president of Harvard resign as an obviously incapable person to hold that office. Institutions have gone quite mad, and I do not want mad institutions getting the idea that they can remove PhDs. I guarantee that they'll come for mine, and they can pry it from my cold dead fingers if they want to try that. So I think Gary was speaking hyperbolically. I love Gary. That was not his favorite moment. I understand my favorite moment of his. I understand his frustration.
Eric, how do we get institutions that are mad in a good way or accept good madness? You've talked about Jim Watson. I think about Claude Shannon riding a unicycle and juggling, and I think there's even a letter.
Well, that's just MIT. Everybody at MIT gets around campus that
way. But seriously, how do we? I don't know. There's a part of me that, I mean, we've had this discussion a lot, but like I think in some ways academia is just too far gone, and like they have the prestige, but that's like the only thing they have left, and then there's sort of very little vitality left. They're stuck in these really wrong frameworks, and they're so far down these cul-de-sacs, and they generally don't have kind of top of the pyramid interdisciplinary view. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to throw them out entirely, but like, is there any going back, or do you need an entirely new structure wholesale?
It's a beautiful question. I just asked ChatGPT to describe the exemptions from the 1964 Civil Rights Act. My guess is that a lot of what's attenuating our institutional vitality is the unintended consequences of trying to get rid of American bigotry and backwardness with federal law that ham-fistedly created this sort of democratic environment where merit is, quite honestly, anything but a democratic environment. It's completely unfair. And if you really believe in a meritocracy, the thick right tail, that juicy kurtosis in human ability, is going to be fought tooth and nail by every mediocre person who can get access to an administrator position at a university. One of the things that you can do is you can create a religious institution. So it would be great to see the Catholic Church, the Jews, the Muslims, the Hindus create religious universities to study stuff that was too hot to handle for everybody else, and discriminate so that we don't get attenuated. Another version of this is if you have a company with fewer than 15 employees, you get to do things that don't require full compliance. There are national interest exemptions. But the biggest problem is that nobody has any money. So if you've never heard my take on this, there are no rich people, because if there were any rich people, all the interesting people would be swimming in money. And I don't mean that they would be driving Lamborghinis like idiots. I mean that they would be free, and they wouldn't worry about whether they could feed their family in 2 years. If you don't have the money for tenure and academic freedom at a meaningful level, and you don't have the money to make the people who made you wealthy and safe, like physicists and mathematicians, rich enough, because FU money is the only freedom left in our society, then of course you're going to get exactly this. So I guarantee you that if I go on Rogan and I say exactly that, which I did, it'll reach millions of people, many of whom are multi-millionaires and billionaires, and I guarantee you nobody thinks to create such an institution. So you have to ask yourself the question, why are our modern day
I was muted that whole time?
Medici families completely uninterested in liberating
chat?
Scientists so that we don't end up in the COVID disaster, we don't end up with terrible economics that leave us vulnerable to a Fed and investment banks, and we don't wind up in a situation where we're forever guessing whether Epstein killed himself or whether UFOs are real or fake.
Eric, could I ask what kind of, you mentioned in terms of being a scientist about the evidence and needing to see it. What kind of evidence would be compelling for you as a scientist in order to take the phenomenon seriously from...
Is Ashton rugging for anyone else?
From the technologically standpoint.
I hear him okay. He's clear.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
Jesse, do you want to take that for... I really believe that I get a chance to speak to a lot of people, and I'm interested in boosting Jesse's voice. So Jesse, what's your take on
that? I think they're more interested in your take than mine because you're more, I don't know, qualified. But I mean,
I'm just gonna say words like "get some" and
Now that's a real hype man right there.
That's awesome. I love it. I'm really curious to get your take.
Huge
I mean, I think there's a different answer from a civilian perspective, which is really all I can speak to, which is I kind of already answered before you entered the room, Eric, as far as like smoking gun
Joey?
disclosure, wide acceptance, what shifts the consensus. And then
you got a question, Joey. Let's get parasocial.
What's materially useful to a scientist, or like what changes their sort of worldview. And so I am curious to hear your take, not to deflect.
So what I would say is fly a bunch of us out to a secret location, get us all under whatever security that you would have needed to in order to execute the Manhattan Project. By the way, look at the number of people on the Manhattan Project, how successful that was. And
here we go. We're getting to chat.
You need a Leslie Groves analog to basically take the scientific talent and then show us things like, do you have
Mystical,
center of mass coordinates for an object that came screaming in from behind our satellites and followed a non-ballistic trajectory? Do you have high quality video? Why don't I have Tic Tac video? Even center of mass coordinates for the Tic Tac. If it's not our object, and it may very well be our object, right? It could be that what we did is we pranked our own pilots with a new technology meant as a decoy, and we wanted to see if it would work. And as a result, we've got a ghost story that won't go away because Fravor actually saw something. The key thing is, I'll take anything that we can get our hands on where the government says, we can assure you that the provenance of this, we have an unbroken chain of custody, the data is unadulterated, ask whatever questions, we have experts in the room, and, as the cool kids say today, let's fucking go. But I promise you that Jesse's probably had me in this thing for 4 years, and I've met one theoretical physicist in the entire time that everyone's talking about interdimensional beings and whether these things defy physical law. And this is not somebody I've ever heard of in physics. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I've never really had a jam session with Eric Davis. You've got to stop talking about Hal Puthoff and Jacques Vallée and Eric W. Davis, and you have to start talking, to Frank Wilczek. And it's not that those other guys are bad, but there's no way in the world. We called in John von Neumann, Richard Feynman, Edward Teller,
700 people,
Robert Oppenheimer, all of these people, Enrico Fermi, Niels Bohr, all of those people were part of the Manhattan Project. This thing would
Fermi was
dwarf
part
the
of the
Manhattan Project, and we're all sitting around waiting for whether or not Jacques Vallée has something to say. I don't even know who Kit Green is. We've got the same personalities. And I'm telling you, I would like to hear from Frank Wilczek, Nima Arkani Hamed, David Tong. There are all sorts of people who should
Ed
be
Witten.
Ed Witten is a very curious question because his father was in this, and I don't know what to make of that.
Eric, I have a crazy physics question for you. In our interview with Hal Puthoff, the Bohm-Aronoff effect came up.
Oh, yes.
Which is, I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, the idea that vector and scalar potentials can possibly be present without a magnetic field present, which, is sort of this bizarre anomaly
this is Bob
in classical electrodynamics. Is it possible that some of these potentials exist in kind of an extended framework? Maybe if you were more faithful to Maxwell's original equations and kind of disintermediated Oliver Heaviside.
I understand what he's saying.
Who kind of condensed his equations.
Guys,
where in the Lorentz equation,
I should understand
C doesn't have to equal 0, and you actually have like new possible wave types that allow for exotic technology.
Look, as you know, I've spent my whole life working on an alternate theory, and let me just tell you, I keep getting bombarded. Well, what do you think of Jack Sarfati's theory or variable speed of light and all this stuff? I believe that the next jumps in physics are so much more potent than these tweaks that it's really. Look, the weird thing that happened to physics is that physicists don't listen to each other's ideas anymore unless you're part of a program. So if a string theorist, for example, hears that his colleague has a new development,
this
he'll
space is
listen in
legendary,
one way.
chat.
And yet,
what a Friday night!
A non-string theorist comes,
Amanda,
the string theorist will set up a series of questions that sound as if they're interested, but it's basically how do I get you to go away as quickly as possible set of questions.
This is Roy D. Herbert's right-hand man.
For example, is practiced at that. Here he says, look, I'm completely open-minded. All you need to do is do this crazy thing that, shows that you've got everything completely wrapped up, and then I'll listen. And my feeling about this is anytime anybody wants to hit the gas, the right thing to do is not to just talk about some alteration of core potentials or make something that was constant variable and promote it to field content. Like, there's a lot to do, and nobody is listening to the crowd of people with different ideas. And I don't just mean myself. I don't think that much of Stephen Wolfram's ideas. I feel better about Peter Woit's. Garrett Lisi's ideas don't work, but they have interesting sub-points within them. There are plenty of people, Julian Barbour. What we're not doing is we are specifically sidelining everyone who refused to pile into the string theory death car. And I'm just not that interested. I'll be honest. I think that a lot of the physics discussed in the UFO community is really low quality. And that's not an insult, because a lot of the physics discussed in the most prestigious institutions we have is of the same type of low quality. It's just slightly better than the UFO community's ideas.
But isn't it possible, though, Eric, that and then I'll leave it to somebody else after this, that we figured out something kind of on the applied side, and initially, and then tried to figure out the theoretical side through a lot of the stuff we've uncovered around, Chapel Hill Conference and, weird anti-grav stuff going on at Wright-Patterson or, whatever. But the applied sides came first, and that sort of ran away into these different, possible sequestered applications. And we don't have a great theory for some of it, but we have ways to make it work just from kind of an engineering perspective. And obviously not having a broader theoretical framework limits the potential uses, but maybe you've found ways to make local incremental progress based on
limited frameworks and application side breakthroughs.
You know, you raise an interesting point, Jesse. Assume that you recovered technology. Just stipulate for the moment that you recovered technology from an unknown civilization far in advance of your own. So basically like the Antikythera mechanism, but from not an ancient human society, but something far more impressive. Whatever that would be, it would be unprecedented because we've never made progress in that way before. So it's entirely possible that if these things exist and are here, that you would be first confronted with somebody else who'd figured this out, and then you'd be reverse engineering it, which effectively doesn't happen. The reason we have CERN and the LHC is that
reverse
we bang
engineering
protons together because we can't study anyone else. We can't crib off anyone other than God's scratch work. As a result of that, yes, that's a logically non-precluded story. I personally believe that we don't actually have any theory like this. I don't believe that my colleagues, you couldn't freeze them all out and keep their mouths shut for this long.
You
could do it for a few years in the Manhattan Project, but it's just not in the nature of physicists to keep this stuff under wraps. So
it's a lot easier than he thinks.
Is it possible that there's a working spaceship where little green men were, and that in that
why is everything quiet? I can't hear anybody.
Oh, sorry. I just want to remind the room to follow Skyfire News for the latest UFO updates and cool spaces like this. Sorry about that. Eric?
Yeah, so the...
to just physicists, by the way. I think it's a human problem. We like to tell our secrets.
Well, yeah, it's not just physicists, but what I am trying to say is that the physicists are not behaving normally at the moment. Like, even without the UFOs, physics is an unbelievable mess. And it's 50 years where 40 years of it have been psychotic and 10 years of it were understandable efforts. There were basically two good guesses during the 70s, one called supersymmetry, one called grand unified theory. And if you don't mind a metaphor, those were the right freeways, but we took the wrong off-ramp. When that didn't pan out, we then started sniffing glue and doing heroic doses of Sonoran desert toad venom. And so we've been 40 years in madness. As a result of that, it's very hard to say, was that intended? Is that a way of derailing a field that had created a doomsday machine in the hydrogen bomb? Was that intended to keep something secret? Jesse and I are both... Jesse, do you want to talk about the 1971 Australian document and its significance?
Yeah, sure. It's the most hidden in plain sight thing that Grush has referenced in multiple interviews, and that everybody in this room should just research because it's insane. It's basically Australian intelligence, their joint intelligence staff, trying to get up to speed on American anti-gravity and UFO retrieval programs since the late 40s. And it is a timeline from the estimates of the situation Twining memo in 47 after obviously Roswell and Kenneth Arnold, to up until 50s anti-gravity research. And it talks about where a lot of this research was, anti-gravity research was housed, different 6 university centers, one of which is University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which was kind of Agnew Bainson, one of which was MIT, which was Roger Babson. And so it's this, to me, absurdly, I mean, if you ever wanted kind of like an interesting smoking gun, like you do all this open source research, you piece all this stuff together and it's like super patchwork quilt. You find this document that like is this like very, very smooth timeline of like everything. And it's done by a Five Eyes ally. And it's pretty bizarre. And Eric, you had the, this sort of
crazy thing that you pointed out is that like Pascal Jordan, who was a Nazi and probably came over in some paperclip like program, was part of the anti-gravity research.
Ben.
But you had guys like Arnowit. Oppenheimer is listed as part of the anti-gravity research, which, to my knowledge, in no other like credible public forum is that written about.
Do you mean Oppenheimer? I know Teller was.
I don't remember. Oppenheimer. Maybe I'm making that up, but I thought Oppenheimer too.
Definitely Teller, Freeman, Dyson,
Wheeler for sure.
Right. Well, Wheeler is actually
Wheeler?
the weird godfather of the North Carolina Chapel Hill Institute for Field Physics.
Ken Wheeler, right?
Because in part, DeWitt was going to blow it, and Wheeler had to say, "Don't worry about palling around with pseudoscientists. Let's get this thing done." So, what Jesse also knows that one way that he was able to seduce me into this was that I had a different puzzle. My puzzle was, why did the physics community in the 1950s and 60s suddenly create the golden age of general relativity when there was no indication that that was the right way to go at the time?
Nah, I'm not gonna.
Why were these pseudoscientists palling around with our top people? And
it's poor taste.
This document, if it's forged, there were maybe 3 people on planet Earth who were really focused on the idea that there was a mystery around the golden age of general relativity. So why would somebody create an elaborate 1971 forgery to tell this entire tale to clear up the mystery? And the claim inside of the document is there's no reason to start studying this stuff, but for the fact that we have recovered craft. So you just have to look at this and as a thing of wonder that as of 1971, there were people who were trying to piece this together. Now, understanding from
where does Eric Weinstein live? LA or something?
Name begins with a C. Ross
Coulthard.
It's like 10 p.m. there.
So his point was, I think, that this was a physicist who was tasked with helping to operate the British. The Brits used Australia as if it were Nevada. So Australia is the UK's Nevada testing site from the earlier era. And so apparently this was a physicist who was trying to figure out what the hell was going on, because supposedly these flying objects attended above ground nuclear detonations. So the whole thing, the way I approach this is I begin from the perspective of let's talk
John
about
Wheeler.
The top
You're right, John Wheeler.
Who we know
Thanks, Devin.
knew their stuff. Let's look at their mysterious and anomalous behavior.
It's John Wheeler.
And then let's try to figure out why they would be doing any weird stuff based on unseen forces. And, my killer question for this world is, where are the physicists? If this is a physics phenomenon, stop talking material scientists, stop talking about metamaterials and smart materials, start talking about the most interesting thing is the absence of physicists. If you want to know how the Soviet Union figured out something was going on with the atomic bomb, it was because we pulled all the fission documents from our libraries in around 1943, and we stopped publishing on fission. And so the Soviets said, that's really interesting. The fission dog isn't barking. What's going on?
How about superconductivity?
The analog right now is, where are the physicists in a thing that is all about physics if it is real, and not at all about physics if it's a head fake?
Eric, what do you think about room temperature superconductivity, in terms of LK99? I know you're very interested in the physics aspect of it.
Not interested.
I got a question for Eric. Last February, we had a bunch of shoot downs. We had the Chinese spy balloon and then 3 other objects that got shot down. And
I can't hear anything now.
And you did some reporting on Twitter. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are now, after it's been about a year, the lack of interest and the lack of answers we've gotten from the government about that.
That was kind of awkward, chat.
Jesse, you want to take it? I'll take it after you.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that was the whole time was weird for me. Like I felt like there were like intentional conflations going on between prosaic objects. The first one being the Chinese spy balloon, which to me was just trying to detect the limits of American radar systems flying over ICBM detectors over in the Aleutian Islands in Alaska, with deflection tech trying to figure out whether certain capabilities or whatever, and then NORAD widens its sensors, and then you're picking up a bunch of junk, and then I don't know, maybe one out of those things is like a real UFO, but like I'm even sort of skeptical of that. And then you had a bunch of people kind of mouthing off about how that was sort of super UFO related, and then it all seemed to go away. And I was a little cynical about the whole thing. It kind of smelled bad to me.
I would say that the whole thing is about what is anti-interesting. The idea that we can't recover debris from these things lets you know that something weird is going on, but the problem is
I mean, if he's not interested in superconductivity, then he
One
doesn't even understand the basics.
Covert
right?
operations. Another thing is
he doesn't even understand the basics.
Sci-fi UFO fantasy stuff. And
yeah, Ryan, it was kind of a weird answer.
Let's just say
not interested.
It's like a pigeon flying through the air, and it suddenly runs
not
into
interested
a force
in superconductivity,
and it can't make any
That's how everything
progress.
Happens.
It doesn't have words for I ran into a plate glass
Very
window.
weird answer, huh?
Whatever it was, found this anti-interesting.
Not interesting.
It would be interesting to know what
Rip
happened.
Zip.
There's a whole explanation about we opened an aperture to shoot stuff down, and by recalibrating the aperture, we started picking up the fact that we're being spied on regularly. But none of us really
not interested in room temperature superconductivity. Not interested in that.
The government is going to waste your time, and that certain people in the UFO community.
Is it sad that I think I might understand physics better than Eric Weinstein understands it?
Stuff ad infinitum.
Pretty cringe.
I'm just going to say I know that didn't make any sense whatsoever, and I'm not going to sit around trying to figure out.
How does he think he's going to achieve a unification
with
theory?
The candelabra in the broom closet.
But what do you think about the lack of answers, the denial of FOIAs? There seems to be some sort of concerted effort to both bury the story and.
Hello. I think I lost you guys.
Oh, you lost. I just want to remind everyone to follow Skyfire News for the latest UFO updates. But I think we'll go over to
also
because I think Chris wanted to ask about Kirkpatrick's article.
Yes, absolutely. And don't forget to retweet the space. I mean, it's rare that we get all these great minds in here. And so I think a lot of people need to hear what's being talked about tonight. But yeah, let's go over to Chris.
Hey, Eric. Hey, Jesse. This question's for Eric, but it also I would like Jesse's take as well. So going back to where you guys were talking about, having the right people in the room, and I completely agree with that.
No, I'm not going to bring it up again.
I think that actually goes back to a couple of tweets that you had put out a couple of weeks ago, and talking about interdimensional beings, and the congressman came out talking about that, and you had a couple of tweets that went into that. I'd like to, if you want to talk about that a little bit more. And then the second question is, to having the right people in the room. Dr. Kirkpatrick, that was with AARO, the director, he has a PhD in physics. Do you think he was the right guy for the job? And did you happen to read his op-ed in Scientific American?
Space right now, guys.
Jesse, you don't mind? I'll take this ahead of you. I do want to say I just don't think that we're being fair enough to Jesse. Jesse's a much more informed person in the space. He's willing to graze much more broadly, and I wouldn't be here except for him. Let me just take that quickly because I'm gonna go meet some people for a musical jam session. I did read that. I thought it was very disappointing. Let me just say this: physics is a big place, and there aren't many people who speak the exact language needed to make progress beyond the standard model and general relativity. I don't think that Dr. Kirkpatrick is somebody who, for example, I don't know his background, but I would guess that like bundle theoretic and geometric physics on both the quantum field theory and general relativity side is probably necessary. I don't think that he's necessarily the right person. I don't know whether he's supposed to put the toothpaste back in the tube. I do think that there's a very strange cabal of people who seem to generate an enormous amount of the weirdness around UFOs. I don't understand it. Why does everything go through Hal Puthoff and Jacques Vallée? It doesn't make any sense to me. But people get very used to it, and they sit around and they talk about Diana Pasulka and Kit Green and Eric W. Davis till the cows come home, and that just doesn't sound like reality to me. With respect to, we also don't want to hurt each other's feelings. Eric W. Davis has been a prince to me, very, very nice guy. Hal Puthoff has been nothing but good to me. I don't want to run these people down. But we're in a situation here in which if you're telling me we've lost control of our airspace and you're talking about interdimensional beings, I can promise you that David Grush has been told that. He knows he has a BA in physics and not a PhD. He's not at the relevant level of expertise. And then he tried to do a good job by illustrating it. And look at the pain that he gets into. He says holography is an example of, dimension shifting. And then suddenly everybody's making fun. Oh, so, is this basically ADS CFT? It's really important to be more decent as humans to the people who are in this. Grush seems entirely sincere to me. I've had tons of interaction with him. If he's fooling me, he's doing a great job. I think that the problem is that what he's saying is so crazy that we just don't have any basic framework for it. Somebody said interdimensional, and I can promise you I haven't met anyone with enough physics knowledge to fill that out. That could be Kaluza-Klein, it could be large extra dimensions, it could be a string theory with Calabi-Yau manifold.
I hate to be egotistical, but I got the answer.
Anyone's guess. It sounds like somebody read Flatland and took
straight up
too many drags on a doobie.
Straight up
and
data.
Came up with interdimensional aliens, and you just can't mix this sort of stupid shit and national security like that. It makes us look like the Keystone Cops. Everybody, Shabbat Shalom. Have a fantastic night. Really great to be with you. Enjoyed it. And you're in good hands with Jesse. Talk to you guys soon.
Later.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Later. Thank you.
Amazing.
Jesse,
thank you, Jesse, for getting him in here. That's great.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, it's always fun to get Eric's view on this stuff. Yeah, absolutely. I hope you enjoyed the jam session, Eric. He plays like 8 instruments, by the way, for anybody curious.
Jesse, I wanted to get your take on that question too. That was for you and Eric, by the way.
And what's the exact? You want to repeat the question real quick?
Yeah, that was just talking about the right people in the room, and then his tweets about that. The interdimensional beings, and then of course Sean Kirkpatrick and his article, and if he was the right guy for the job when he was at AARO, stuff like that.
I think kind of, I hate using the word epistemically, but I keep wanting to use it, so sorry. But like Eric and I are coming at it from two entirely different places. Like when I hear
text Jesse to show Eric the videos,
I'm like, oh, not extraterrestrial in some undiscovered physics framework. I think Eric is so much deeper on the physics, like actual physics, where he's like trying to port that into like specific theoretical models. So like when I hear interdimensional, I'm like, okay, like totally possible in some like, again, yet to be discovered framework, like interstitial reality or whatever. I mean, I do think it is interesting, right? You have like
a lot of
3 dimensions of space, a 4th dimension, which is time. In that 4th dimension, you have Zeno's arrow of time, which is like this sort of constant linear progression. Obviously, in general relativity, you have like dilation. I think in quantum stuff, you a lot of the weird phenomena might have to do with time spookiness. And so I think an interesting, kind of crazy mental model, which Eric might want to leave the room to not be associated when I say this or whatever, but it's like
if you have a fifth dimension where Zeno's arrow of time doesn't sort of apply, and you have the ability to kind of timeline edit, I think that's an interesting kind of inroad to progress here. And then on the Kirkpatrick stuff, but again, I would follow more like the applied stuff. I think what's really interesting, if you can, from a research perspective, find different possible applied breakthroughs in disparate locations that went kind of dark or something after somebody made a claim. I think that's like an interesting kind of heuristic. But on the Kirkpatrick front, I mean, I think he's just going to be like looked at really badly by history. And like, you have one guy saying like, I reached out to AARO and I'm bringing 40 people directly to the Inspector General, and like he's saying it's urgent and credible. And then you have another guy saying the guy never reached out to me. Like it's just so easily falsifiable. It's such a bold lie. It's so like so it's like we're gonna know one way or another very shortly. I'm super skeptical of Kirkpatrick, and a lot of people use the kind of Ed Condon analogy. Again, something Red is really responsible for kind of digging up, and like maybe there's something there, because again, it's like I think it's really interesting when people are not, again, Mick West is probably like the best form of a skeptic, where at least he's arguing based on first principles. When people are like completely like reflexively against any sort of first principles analysis, and just completely like smug and skeptical, which Kirkpatrick seems to be, even more so than NASA at this point. I think there's just something off there, and you have to ask some reasonable questions about motives.
Ashton, and then we're probably going to wrap up soon, I feel like, and we'll head over to the Tupa after space, and we could have like more of the community talking and whatnot. But it was awesome space. Everyone go follow Skyfire News for all the latest updates. Jesse, dude, you killed it. You brought Eric in. That was awesome. That was epic. Deep was here. We had Curt, Jaimungo. It was pretty stacked today. Bruce was here. Everyone was here. Ashton?
Yeah, epic space in general. Make sure everybody, you guys are following Skyfire News. Red Panda and Tuba have just been killing it in terms of content, putting it out there. I've been super impressed by their stuff. Also, huge thanks to Jesse for being here. Super impressive guy in terms of all his knowledge and picking up like the physics stuff. And that's kind of what I wanted to ask Jesse. Similar question to what I asked Eric Weinstein is, first of all, what are your thoughts on room temperature superconductivity in general? And then what's your thoughts in terms of like the academic side, like the Eric Weinsteins, in terms of their view of physics versus like, I feel like you have a more progressive view in terms of what's possible in general. I'm just curious, not to, don't want you to badmouth them or anything like that, but, what are your thoughts in terms of like how you distinguish the people who are very strong advocates for the UFO phenomenon versus, what Eric Weinstein was saying about, being skeptical and needing to see more data, et cetera?
Personally, and again, probably unqualified to have this position. I literally have a BA in history, but like, I think you have to follow applied breakthroughs. I think the theoretical models come after looking at observable anomalies. And so like one interesting kind of like through line or breadcrumb is like, it's like, why did you have this like resurgence in anti-gravity research in the 50s at places like Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, or like
he's a history major, huh? That makes a lot of sense, guys.
The Chapel Hill Conference, which established quantum gravity, of which string theory is kind of the stepdaughter, if you will, in 1957. So it's like, why do you have this interest in anti-gravity that like spikes in the 50s? And I think there's actually a very interesting through line.
I try not to make
anything
like, political, guys.
German programs. There are these legends of like, if you read Nick Cook's book called The Hunt for Zero Point, Skoda Works, which is, you could think of as kind of the German skunk works in Czechoslovakia and Poland. They're doing some pretty out there stuff. You have the Der Glock Bell rumors, and then you have like Victor Schauberger, flying discs and saucers. It's my understanding that at least some of that team, there's a guy named Richard Mita, makes it to a project in Canada that is a joint British aircraft and Canadian kind of outfit called AARO Car, which eventually gets taken over by the U.S. and housed at Wright-Patterson. And so it's like you figured out like this like crazy applied stuff. It's probably done in this like era of border science in Germany, which actually didn't take relativity seriously because to them it was seen as Jewish science and associated with Einstein, and they were obviously hyper Aryan racists or whatever. And so I think this stuff's taking place in an entirely different framework. If you look at Victor Schauberger, he's like this bizarro naturalist who's talking about implosion vortexes and shit. And so like I again, like I'm maybe way more renegade than Eric is in that, like I think theory follows these wacky experiments that often tend to peak in times of instability and war. And I think it's sort of interesting to track that first. And I think if you track the personnel just from like a pure like IQ, credentials, physics level, and you're like, why aren't these people like interacting with the UFO world? I think you're just gonna get really frustrated.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I didn't know you were a history major. I think that makes a lot of sense about how you have some deep knowledge about a lot of the lore and everything related to all this. But yeah, very impressive. Thanks a lot, man.
I just want to, we're probably going to end it here. I want to thank everyone for showing up. Every Friday we try to do like a major show, get
this was awesome, space
high-level guests. And then we go through the news, right? If you're following this topic, you know that there's news happening every single day. Before I was like really, really paying attention, I didn't know that. I only got the normie stuff, like when David Grush came out, or 2017 when we got all those videos, or the Pentagon confirming in 2020. I didn't realize until I really started paying attention that there is news every single day. So every Friday we go through the news of the week. We try to have really good guests, and I hope everyone enjoyed the space.
This was this was amazing. I mean, the guest list was nuts. I can't believe the conversations and directions we were able to go. Positively, the conversation never broke down, guys. This is what it's about. So please remember the space, retweet the space. We recorded it, so don't be afraid to share it again. Great.
And Jesse, thanks for coming, bro. Thanks for bringing Eric. Do you have anything coming up? And yeah, like people said, everyone follow Skyfire News. Anything you want to promote or anything before we close out here?
Thank you guys for the opportunity. I hate to hit you with a shameless plug. I'm coming out with the craziest kind of 2-hour documentary. Ooh. Almost as good as one of your videos, Red Panda, but not quite there. In like, I want to say like a week or two. So check that out.
Tonight,
thank you guys for having me. This is awesome. And I'm glad, Keemstar, you lending your massive voice to this space is super cool. And yeah, Tupa, thank you for moderating, and appreciate all you guys.
Oh, it was a pleasure, man.
Definitely have to do it again.
When that video drops, make sure you remind us. I mean, we'll see it anyways, but yeah, we'll definitely cover it.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Definitely will.
Awesome, man. Well, I want to thank all the speakers again. You guys were great. Sorry if you guys didn't get a chance to ask a question. We're going to host an after space. Come to that, and let's talk about it, guys. All right. Good show,
bye, everyone.
Damn, that space was fire, chat. That space was fire. Wow. Okay, let's do a quick breakdown, and then we're gonna end it for the night. It's been a long stream. That was really good space. Wow. Well, we have some data here for Eric Weinstein, if he's interested. I may try to reach out to Jesse and see if he can look at this. Jesse kind of played it like, I'm good at reading people. Probably because I used to play poker a lot, so I'm good at reading people and telling people figuring out what people's what their feelings are about stuff. I think that my honest opinion of Jesse is he's not convinced the videos are real, and so he's afraid to put himself out there with respect to the videos. But I think that if we present ourselves in such a way where people know we're being honest about our own opinion, then slowly people will start to come to accept them and look at them with an open eye, right? Because people like Eric Weinstein want evidence. Well, we've got evidence, man. We got videos. We got exactly what he wants to see. Now, it's kind of crazy how, like, people will say they want evidence, but then they look at the actual evidence and then they say that, oh, well, that's not, that's fake or whatever, right? And that's the reason why we ask people, like, what do you want to see from the evidence, right? Because we've got it. We're staring at it right here, right? We're staring at it right here. It's like, what else can you ask for other than, like, seeing crafts, seeing the orbs firsthand, right? And that's kind of what Eric Weinstein said in his response, is he's like, oh, well, take us into the room. Well, you have to sign an NDA if they do that. If they take you into the room, they're going to make you sign an NDA, and then you can't say anything about it, right? That's the reality of the situation. So if Eric Weinstein wants that, then the problem is he'll never be able to talk about it, right? That's the issue. That's the thing I find is kind of hypocritical about a lot of these people, is like, they want the evidence, but then when they see the evidence, they go, oh, that's fake, or, they don't realize they'll have to sign an NDA in order to be able to, like, even see the evidence. I want to address a few questions that were in the chat. Is Hal Puthoff counterintelligence? Here's the reality of my opinion for everybody who's out there. I'm like 2 degrees of freedom away from Hal Puthoff, okay? So, like me, other people, Hal Puthoff. I think that on the inside, a lot of these guys, and I can't believe all the connections that I've been able to make, the people that know these people on the inside. Like, I haven't been hanging out with Jesse, but, like, we were in spaces with him. I've talked to him on the phone. He knows David Grush firsthand, right? He's friends with him. I know people who know Hal Puthoff, like, so I'm not directly connected to these people. I'm 1 degree of freedom away from them, or 2 degrees, however you want to count that. There's people on the inside that want the information to come out, and there's people on the inside that don't want the information to come out. I think that they both have justifiable reasons. You heard it tonight on the space. The reality of the situation, chat, is that some people think that this can be doomsday technology, and they want America to have this technology and nobody else, which is very noble and patriotic and, a kind of nationalist approach to the situation. And I can't fault them for that. I think that Lou Elizondo is one of those people. I think that Lou Elizondo is one of the people that is country first, and he's not going to release any information that could hurt the nation, right? Because he has his NDA and because he's probably very patriotic. And that's why I think the situation for him is that he's slow dripping the information and profiting off of it while not really telling anything that moves the needle forward. Because, like I said on the space, it's a Pandora's box. The moment you say that we have a unification theory of quantum and macro that's been proven, everything comes out at once. It's not a matter of saying, oh, well, we are going to get the medical healing and the teleportation tech and the force field and the free energy, but we're going to leave the doomsday technology hidden. That's not an option. It's not Burger King. It's not have it your way. It's the moment you reveal any of this, everything comes out at once. It's a Pandora's box. The Eric Weinstein part about superconductivity, that was a weird answer. So I think that confirms our opinion about Eric Weinstein, which is that he's a very smart person, but that when it comes to the UFOlogy space, he's got a childlike mentality to it. He's a very new approach to it, right? He's still stuck in the CNN brain approach of, well, I haven't seen a paper about it that's been peer reviewed by my favorite scientist, and I haven't seen it on TV, right? Like, that's the issue. Is that, and he thought, we heard him say it right there. He said he thought, well, why aren't the physicists coming out? He was in a literal interview with Jesse Michels and Hal Puthoff. Hal Puthoff is one of the people who knows about the information. He says he knows Eric Davis. Eric Davis is one of the people as well. I have it on pretty good authority that Eric Davis is one of the people who's hiding the information. He's one of the people who thinks that it shouldn't be released. That he's happy to go out there and say that, oh, it's all fake, don't look at it. Even though he knows it's real. Imagine just theoretically if Eric Davis has gone through a literal Stargate, a portal, and then he's going out there and telling other people that it's not real. Just think about that for a second. The same way where we have him on record talking to Admiral Davis or Admiral, what's the Davis Admiral paper or whatever? We have him on record talking about this stuff, and then he denies it. Like he downplays it, right? So just think about that. Just keep in mind, Chad, this is what I want you guys who are listening to think about, is that there are people on both sides. Some people that want the information out, some people that don't. So to Eric Weinstein's point, why are the physicists not bringing it out? They are. They're trying. The reality is there's not that many of them. What we found out is a small niche group of people that know about this. And all you have to do is say that they are disinformation or that they're crazy or all this stuff that they say, and then nobody takes them seriously. It's a lot easier than Eric Weinstein thinks. And he even said it. He even said, well, the moment that Wilson, the Wilson Davis memo, right? That's the name of it. But it's a lot easier than Eric Weinstein says. He says, well, I don't want to go put my name out there. People don't want to tie themselves to it because they get attacked and blah, blah, blah. Well, there you go, man. That's the reason why the disinformation is so easy. Because all it takes is people to discredit you, and now you don't even want to speak up anymore. Because the people that know have basically no incentive to release the information. Let's just say that I know that orbs are real. That I get told that the orbs in this video that we're looking at right here are real. And I can profit off of it. Why the hell would I want to let everybody else know about it? Why would I put my family's, why would I put my family on the line just to reveal this to other people that don't want to believe in it in any way? I wouldn't. If the government were to pay me $10 million to stop talking about this, why would I not accept that? Right? As opposed to all the abuse that I've gotten from people and all the stuff like that. And I consider myself more able to take all the troll abuse than random people. Like random people that are scientists or whatever, like this stuff breaks them down. For me, I don't give a crap, right? So that's how it's so easy to keep it secret. So those are the first two questions. The other one was, what are the thoughts on metamaterials? Are they alive? I don't think that metamaterials are necessarily alive, but are plasmoids alive? Now that's an interesting question. I think the question comes down to, is the universe itself alive? Imagine our bodies, right? Now, if you were to look inside of our bodies at the smallest possible scales, would we find living organisms in our bodies? Yeah, absolutely we would. Would they be able to understand that they're living inside of a body of another organism that's alive? Probably not. Could that be the same as our universe? Theoretically. So I don't have any, I don't struggle with this idea that plasmoids themselves could be alive. I think that that's something that seems perfectly reasonable. Now, I don't have any evidence or proof of that, but when you look at the double slit experiment, one of the things that I get from the double slit experiment is that the universe is aware of itself, that it's somehow able to retroactively react faster than the speed of light to the knowledge that it's being observed. And that's a pretty weird phenomenon. It goes beyond our understanding of consciousness and linear time flows. And that's what I think Eric Weinstein and the old school physicists that don't believe in a lot of this stuff really need to go back to. How do they explain the double slit experiment? And the answer is they can't, right? And that's really where all this boils back down to. You need, whatever theory you come up with, you need to have that be able to incorporate the double slit experiment and the results related to the double slit experiment. And once you do that, you start to realize that even stuff like this, which seems impossible, can actually make scientific sense. That we can break through what we understand to be possible and rational through this level of reality that we're seeing right here to another dimension. And now when we talk about multi-dimensional species, we're not talking about ghosts and whatever, although you might be. What we're really talking about is what you see in these videos, is the ability to break through these dimensions to another dimension, which is the dimension that you see when the black comes up, the cold endothermic zap, which can provide potentially even negative energy, which is what's needed to keep the wormhole open here. That's the extra dimension, and that's why the plane literally disappears right here. Is there's another dimension, but you can also just think of it as faster than light travel, right? The way that Roy D. Herbert looks at it. This is where we have to break down this concept of extra dimensional beings. But what was said today when Amanda brought up and retweeted that or posted that video, which I think it made it on Reddit, by the way, Amanda. The one for the contractor who knows about the information and said about trans-dimensional travel. This is what they're talking about. This is trans-dimensional travel. You're staring at it. It's just like, keep this in mind, chat. The last thought. Science is explaining observable reality. We just use words to explain what we see. So if you want to call this superluminal travel, if you want to call this trans-dimensional travel, whatever you want to call it, we're talking about an airplane disappearing in one moment and then appearing somewhere else in the same moment or in a moment later. Okay. I don't think that Eric knows about the MH370 stuff. My guess is he has no idea whatsoever. So, and to Tertile's point, wormhole, multidimensional, they're all the same thing. That's not what's important. What we call it is not important. What we're actually seeing is what's important. That's my whole point there. You want to call it multidimensional, you want to call it a wormhole. At the end of the day, they're all the same thing. We're just putting semantical terms onto something that we're visually observing in our actual reality right here. You want to call it a wormhole, a portal, you want to call it a phase transition, whatever you want to call it, it's all the same stuff. That's the important part. And yes, to Eve's point, would you say it disappears at the moments of Planck's constant? That's also another way to interpret it. Yes. Is that the super force is equivalent to the Planck force and potentially the Planck constant. I think I'm getting that correct from a scientific perspective. Is that the Planck constant, the reason why you get the Planck scales is because this is where the universe is expanding theoretically faster than the speed of light. This is where you have a breakdown of the forces where we can't comprehend it. I think that is accurate. Izzy, big donation. Thank you very much. They won't because they don't want to lose funding or credibility. This is exactly right. This is the why the scientists don't speak up to Eric Weinstein's question. Why do they not want to speak up about this stuff? A, because they're getting funding, and the funding they're getting is huge. These people are living high life, right? And the second is they don't want to lose credibility. Look how many people are calling us grifters, even though we've never asked for money ever. Never. We've never gone out there and said anything esoteric. All the stuff that we've been saying is supported by physics and electrical engineering. Imagine if we were out here saying that, like, we can control the orbs with our consciousness, or that we can conjure the orbs with our consciousness. People would be calling us totally nuts, right? To the point that somebody just brought up in the chat, the Chris Bledsoe theory, right? And this is why I don't approach that, is that I take it from a very rational, logical approach. As logical as teleporting a plane really can be, right? Because you have to keep it somewhat grounded. And it's not a matter of I really think it's aliens and I'm lying about it to make it more palatable. I literally think this is Lockheed Martin technology. I literally do. The reality is, if I was trying to make this more palatable, I would not be saying we're teleporting a plane here. I would be saying that they are cloaking this plane somehow, because that's, to me, the most palatable option. But it's not cloaking, because the plane just literally freaking disappears and there's no smoke trail anymore. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, Charles, actually, that's the one I was just talking about, the Nico one, guys. I was literally just mentioning the Nico one. We have, like, at least 4 different people now, I think, basically saying that teleportation is real. You've got Stephen Greer mentioning it. I think even Richard Doty was mentioning it. You've got this Nico guy mentioning it, and Salvatore Pius also says that it's legit. I mean, we've got tons of people saying that teleportation is real, and people just aren't listening. It's that simple. They say, oh, give me the proof. Well, what do you want me to do? You want me to get Lockheed Martin to break the orbs out? It's not something you can just do in your home. You got to have like multi-billion-dollar technology in order to pull it off. So that's the problem, right? So chat, I love what you guys are doing right now. I think this was a great stream and a great space that we had. We've been going 3.5 hours. Let me see if there's any other last questions. Yeah, I would say that the real grifters are the ones who are profiting off disclosure, profiting off the science while not disclosing what they really know. To me, that's what a grifter is. Somebody who knows more information, but they're slow dripping you that information. So far, I've never done that. So far to date, I've given you guys all the information I can give you without compromising the people that I trust and my sources. And in some cases, I've even done that. I've shown my DMs, and I get people attacking me for that. I don't say stuff, and I get people attacking me for that. The one thing I don't do is I don't give you guys false promises. If it's my opinion, I tell you it's my opinion. If it's people that I've talked to, I tell you it's my people I've talked to. And if it's part of the investigation, I just put it out there right away. Only a handful of times have I even said that I'm going to give an announcement for announcement. Only like once or twice, I think I said, tomorrow morning, check out the post I'm going to make. Rarely do I even do that kind of stuff. I just put it out there. And I don't care how many people watch or how many views I get or how much money I make. That's not a factor at all in anything that I've been doing. Okay, any other last questions before we end tonight? Cheers, everybody. I definitely want to find out who that Nico guy is because I'd be happy to talk to him. Apparently, he's putting out a book pretty soon. Now, that does make me question stuff a little bit, but the reality is maybe we'll put out a book one day. I don't know, right? I might put out a book one day, and because the answer is I want to get answers for these freaking videos. I don't want to necessarily profit off it, but the reality is I think that the book that we would write could be a New York Times bestseller. I mean, even if it was fake, I think it could be a New York Times bestseller because, man, we have gone through some crap, chat. Like, you guys who have been following since August, you know what we've been going through. We used to be a 30-follower account, and we would join spaces and basically beg people to look at the stuff we're looking at. Now we're a 79,000-follower account, and we're in spaces with Eric Weinstein, Keemstar, Jesse Michels, and we're asking like real adult scientific questions to people. Like, just look at how far we've come. Incredible story. Just incredible. I sit there and find myself looking at some of my own tweets and just rereading them like 5 times because I find it interesting, and I'm just sitting there going, shit, I wrote this? It's crazy, man. It's really crazy. So the reality is I don't know what comes next for us, guys. I'm on this roller coaster ride just like you guys are. If you guys think that this is wild and you can't believe it, well, imagine how I feel being in the driver's seat, right? I can't even believe it half the time. I'm sitting here looking at a plane disappear out of space-time. I would have never thought this is possible without seeing 2 perfectly in sync videos with far more detail than anybody could ever fake. It's just freaking nuts. So yeah, we'll see. Last thing I'll say is that there are people who are interested in documentary. I turned one person down already who wanted to do some kind of like human interest story style documentary about me. I said I wasn't interested. I didn't really want to do that. Mellow Demon, who you guys saw in the space tonight, is somebody who's my friend who wants to do a documentary about it. The reality is I don't think the government will let a documentary get done. In the same way we have people talking about us and talking crap about us, like that's going to happen to people who are serious producers as well. They're going to say, don't do this because they'll make up something or they'll say it's a national security issue or whatever. Because The reality is, if this information is real, if the video that we're looking at right now is real, this represents billions of dollars in lawsuits and potential jail time for the people who have been hiding this information. That's the scary part about it. Part of me actually hopes it's fake, because if it's not, I'm at real risk. So that's the reality of it a little bit, guys. But yeah, a documentary would be sick about this, guys. The only sad part is, like, I don't know if we have enough, like, people aren't following me around recording me. But that's also part of the reason why I'm streaming everything, because one day, if somebody wants to do a documentary about this, I want them to have everything recorded, right? I want them to have everything, which is all our streams, all the podcasts we've been doing. I want everything documented. And then also, if I were to just somehow disappear one day, well, there you guys go. You've got, like, me saying I wouldn't suicide myself like a dozen times. Like, how much more do you need than that, right? So appreciate you guys. Just to close out the stream tonight, let's go back to full screen. Izzy, thank you very much for the second donation. I appreciate you. Cheers to the ugly and beautiful truth. That's one of the last things I want to say, is that the truth is ugly. The truth is not something that's easy to accept for people. That's the reality of the truth. I learned that even before the videos came out, is that the truth is something that people do not want to accept, right? And I knew that ahead of time. And that's fine. I don't care. I'm fine with accepting all of that. The other thing, I saw some other messages in the chat. Honestly, if we made a documentary, I think that it would be similar to Tiger King, based on the just amount of drama behind the whole phenomenon. Like Keemstar was talking about today in the space, like, it's crazy how much drama there is about there. Keemstar is like, I never expected this much drama. I didn't expect it either when I got involved in it. I had no idea what UFO Twitter was going to be like. It was way more drama than I even thought. Political sides, you've got people who, like, they've got their own pet beliefs about what the phenomenon's about, and other people have their own pet beliefs. Like, it is wild. It deserves, like, a Tiger King style documentary. It really does. I mean, there's literal criminals, like Keemstar saying, in this community. Literal criminals. It's just nuts. Okay, any last questions, guys? Yeah, there's probably an active disinformation campaign hiding the stuff. But here's the thing, too, guys. I don't want you guys to go on a Reddit and everywhere else and claim that everybody's a different disinformation agent. The reality is there are probably a few, but most people aren't. Most people are just blinded in their own worldview. Just like the movie The Matrix, most people are not necessarily disinformation agents. They just unknowingly fight for the status quo. What they think and they know to be true, they're willing to fight for it, because the reality is, if they are wrong, then everything they know is a lie. And here's a sad thing that I've realized as well, is that I've polarized so many people with this, where now, if they were to admit they were wrong, it would damage their credibility permanently. Like, just look at it through the lens of just Mick West alone. If these videos were to end up being true, Mick West's whole career is over. Permanently over. He can never debunk anything ever again, because everybody would say, look at how wrong you were about the MH370 videos, in every single reply to everything he debunks for the rest of his entire life. That's just the reality, right? And that's just Mick West, let alone all the other people who've been railing, saying how fake it is. Imagine the psychology that they would have to go through to accept that they were wrong about the videos. They will never accept that they were wrong. Even if the DOD were to come out and say that these videos about MH370 are real, the majority of the debunkers would not admit that they were wrong. Most of them would say, no, the DOD is lying, whatever, because cognitive dissonance would take over, and they would have to commit to themselves that their world is not a lie. So I want you guys to understand the reality of the situation we're in. We have to awake people up. It's not a matter of proving the technology to be real. Technology is already 100% real based on my own investigation and everything that we've found out there. It's a matter of waking people up. Like in the Matrix, waking people up to the reality that they live in a matrix. And that's all I want to say to you guys. I appreciate you guys very much. Everybody in the chat today, everybody who followed along. We had an awesome stream, awesome space. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for being part of MH370X. And I look forward to talking to you guys again. I think the next stream will be tomorrow night, guys. So tomorrow night, next stream. Thank you for being here. Let's do it again. Peace, everybody.